Hello and welcome to week number 7 of the Zwift Racing League. I'm Matt Stevens, and alongside me for the ride today is Hannah Walker. Hey Hannah.
Hey Matt, great to be back. I can't believe it's week 7 already with the penultimate round of this Zwift Racing League.
I know, I cannot believe how quickly it has gone. It's gone in almost like the blink of an eye, but we've had some magnificent racing so far. And of course, we are into the last couple of rounds now. This is the final scratch/points race. Next week, it's the final team time trial, but it's going to be a big race today. Now, those of you who've followed us so far over the last 6 or 7 weeks will know what this is all about. But for those of you that don't, this basically is the brand new home for Zwift Racing. It's a team-based league system, and the cool thing about the Zwift Racing League is that it's open to everybody in the Zwift community. As long as you race on Zwift, you can race in these leagues. Now, we're going to be commentating, well, this particular league that we're talking about, that we're commentating on for the last 6 weeks, is the Premier League. These are the best Zwift racers, basically, in the world. But the bottom 3 teams in this league, and there's 19 men's teams and 17 women's teams, at the end of this particular season, they'll drop down into the community divisions, and then 3 new teams from the community divisions will move up into this Premier Division. So there's lots and lots to play for. And it's a very different type of racing as well. On alternate weeks, we have a team time trial 1 week, and the next week we have a scratch race, and well, with a points race system built in. And basically, the most points that the teams accumulate at the end of the night, well, the team with the most points will win at that particular night, and it's the team with the most points at the end of the 8 weeks that will win the league, and the 3 teams with the least amount of points, well, they'll be relegated. Now, last week we had a team time trial, a relatively flat team time trial around London. Let's have a little look at what went on.
Well, it was a 31-kilometre throwdown in the battle on the streets of London on the greatest London flat course. Only 150 metres of climbing, but it was I Raced Like a Girl who were fastest at the first intermediate checkpoint with 10 minutes and 45 seconds. 2020 with Reznikov there, who's just taken 3rd place at the Israeli Road Race Championships, and the formation of Heino, as always, they've done incredibly in all of these team time trials. Williams wasted no time to drop back and get out of the win, but I Raced Like a Girl had a standout ride so far, and R3R no pins with the likes of Lou Bates. Heino were already able to catch one of their rivals who were out ahead of them. Hansen just leading that chase to Aero. And they were already almost a minute up on their nearest rivals. Coming into the finish, it was Evok who were still with the 5 riders across the finish line on the Mall. But Heino coming across the line just over a minute quicker than their nearest rival. Absolute incredible effort again from Heino Racing Team.
Well, as you say, Hannah, Heino Racing Team have absolutely dominated proceedings. As you can see, 100% record. At the moment, they are unbeatable. What can the other teams do in the last couple of rounds? It's going to be very interesting if the other teams can step up and try and kind of wrestle this dominance away from Heino. But there are the results at the moment. 120 points, a maximum score there for Team Heino. 2020 are second with 108, and not too far behind them at all is Team Aero with 105. Then in 4th place with 100 points is No Pins R3R E-Racing Team. Then 5th is Evok, 6th Kiss Racing, 7th the Cryo RDT, 8th I Race Like a Girl, 9th Sarith and Pro's Closet, and then 10th are the Team Swedish Zwifters. Now, as I talked about earlier on, this isn't just about who wins the league. This is a community-based league with teams that will move up and down. So as we look towards the back end of the league, at the tail end, we'll see that there are a few teams, Hannah, here in a little bit of a pickle. And let's pick out Vision E Racing, who are 13th with 49, Fearless with 43, Turbo with 42, Velocity Vixen with 34. 3 of those 4 teams are going to be moving down unless something strange happens. TFC are going to be a little bit nervous as well, but that's going to mean at the top end of the ranking and at the bottom end of the ranking, Hannah, there's so much still to ride for. They're fighting for their lives here, aren't they?
They are. There's so much at stake, and these teams will have come into tonight knowing that there's only tonight and next week left to make a difference. What is their tactic going to be? What have they spoken about within the team? What's the communication going to be like? No team wants to move from this Premier Division into the Community Division. They want to stay within this top league. So it's really going to be a race of two halves. Those teams fighting to stay in this division, and the other teams, the likes of Heino and 2020, sort of battling it out for the overall victory. So it's going to be incredibly exciting.
It certainly is. Well, we've talked about the positions, we've talked about the stakes, the win overall, the relegation. Let's have a look at the battleground that these teams are going to be riding on tonight. It is this course. It's a lovely course. It's in France. It's called the Petite Boucle. And if anybody's wondering why it's called the Petite Boucle, well, the Grand Boucle, of course, is the Tour de France. We had the first ever virtual Tour de France back in the summer, held on these very roads, and myself and Hannah were both very lucky enough to have commentated on that. So there'll be an air of familiarity here to many of these riders. And of course, there are 5 intermediate points across the course as well in which to gain points for their team. There are a couple of Queen of the Mountains, the Aqueduct, and then we have 2 sprints at the Pavé and the Ballon sprint. So lots of points out on the road as well as across the finish line. And there we go, 47.03 kilometres in the distance. So before we head into the race, just a quick word about this course. It really is going to be, this is the longest course, Hannah, that we've had so far. It's the longest course of this first iteration of the league. So the endurance is going to really play its part today.
It certainly is, but also, with only 288 meters of climbing, it's only going to be the climb which actually is unclassified, which could do the damage. And I think we're going to see the speed take its toll on some of those riders, who's able to maintain such a high speed for a long period of time.
Definitely. Well, we understand the riders have already been off in the pens. As I say, it's a slightly longer race today, so they've been riding for about 12 minutes now. We understand they're thundering along the course, but before we jump into the course and see how the racing's getting on, just pull us a few names, a couple of teams to really look out for here tonight, Hannah.
Well, we can never underestimate any of the riders from Heino Racing Team. There's no real favourite, but just all of them are incredible. No pins R3R. We've got Lou Bates, who's always on good form. Mary Wilkinson from Canyon Esports. Watch out for her, as is Illy Gardner from KISS Racing Team. 3 riders from 2020 will be representing their nations at the upcoming UCI World Championships. So look out for Natalia Franco, Christine Kulczynski and Shayna Paulus with that team.
Indeed. There is the photographs, or there are the photos, should I say, of the dominant team so far. Vicky Neelant, Cecilia Hansen, Vicky Whitelaw, Alice Lethbridge and Caroline Williams. Both Hansen, as you said, and Whitelaw, both representing Australia and Sweden at the forthcoming Esports World Championships held, of course, here on Zwift. It'll be in Watopia, it won't be in France, but it'll be on the 9th of December. Make sure you tune in for that. We'll have a little bit of a snippet of something a bit later on for you later on. But yeah, Team Heino, the most dominant squad. And also I think it's worth picking out one individual from the Vision E Racing as well, while we look at the 2020 squad, with 3 of their number representing their countries in the World Championships.
Yeah, Dame Sarah Story, we can't discount her. She'll also be representing her nation, Great Britain, at the upcoming World Championships. 14 Paralympic gold medals for Dame Sarah Story. So it'll be very interesting to see how she plays out. I know she's been doing a lot of work on Zwift in the last weeks, especially with those championships coming up. So be incredibly exciting to see how she gets on.
Yep, and she, without a shadow of a doubt, when you look at the composition of this field, there's some really experienced road riders, some excellent Zwifters here. But we've seen Dame Sarah's Story race on Zwift before, but she is, well, look, you can just see there. Look, she's got the jersey, one of the many, many rainbow bands there displayed. She really is a class rider. But we talked a little bit about this course earlier on. Firstly, the length. It's only 3 kilometres shy of the distance that we're going to see in the first Esports World Championships on Zwift. So in terms of preparation, this is an ideal race looking ahead towards the World Championships, as well, of course, as the stakes in relation to the race itself today.
Yeah, it certainly is. As you say, for the stakes for the overall tonight and then for the racing, incredible. It will suit Dame Sarah's Story. However, for those riders wanting to prepare, seeing how they fare against other riders on this distance of course, making also the multiple efforts and intensities needed on these intermediate sprints and Queen of the Mountains.
Here we go. Sorry to cut across you there, Hannah, because we got the first bit. They're absolutely flying on this course. Godby is in the lead here. Looks like Godby is going to take the first sprint of the day, just ahead of Meiki van der Plas. Melanie Mara also there. So Vision E Racing, 10.3 watts a kilo, that sprint. They're moving along very, very quickly indeed. 12 kilometres done in only 15 minutes. That just shows how quick this is. But there is confirmation. Godby takes the win for Vision E Racing ahead of Meiki van der Plas of No Pins, just ahead of Mora there in third place. So first blood to Vision E Racing. But a couple of riders always been tailed off on this sprint, but we saw the effort earlier on, Hannah, that Dame Sarah Story was making just to hold on in the bunch. This is going to be like an at or near threshold effort here, isn't it?
It will, and if you look at the, how fast these riders are going, you can even see on screen how fast and how hard. The cadence here on Jackie Godby there, they're traveling here at 46, 47 kilometers per hour and making it look easy into that sprint, well over 50 kilometers per hour. So as you say, riders who, struggling to maintain that speed, and we're only 11 kilometers, 12 kilometers into the race.
Oh, they're moving very, very quickly indeed. As you say, a nice little blob of riders here. Maybe riders just taking a bit of an opportunity here to kind of rest up a little bit after that effort. It's so crucial that you don't get tailed off in one of those sprints, because it's very, very difficult to get back onto the group once you're distanced in Zwift. And again, if any of you are watching e-racing, racing on the Zwift platform for the very, very first time, there are so many similarities between riding on the road here. The rider's within the middle of this pack, and when you ride on the wheel of another rider, you will get the draft benefit. So when you're riding on the front, you essentially take that virtual wind, but when you sit in the slipstream of a rider in front of you, you will actually get the benefit. But explain a little bit in these early stages as we look at Illy Gardner, the winner already of one of these rounds in the brand new Zwift Racing League from the KISS racing team. Just explain the gamification side of things, Hannah, here, for anybody who's watching this for the very first time. Actually, hold that thought, because we're already on to the first climb of the day. Let's get that one out of the way. Then we'll talk about the power-ups at play. But Lethbridge now accelerating onto the first Queen of the Mountains.
Yeah, well, this Queen of the Mountains, average of 5%, only 400 meters long, but you can just see how it's stretching out this peloton, this bunch. We're almost starting to cut the peloton in half, and it's Lethbridge who's opening up that gap to Caroline Williams. Incredible numbers and power. She's going to take maximum points on the Aqueduct Queen of the Mountain. Close in for second and third, though.
It certainly was, but as you can see, it's really, really thinned things out. It's only a short little climb, only about 700 metres there, but Lethbridge takes it for Team Hino ahead of Caroline Williams from Hino as well. And then there's Shayna Paulus, an exceptionally good all-rounder, in fact, but she's got a real punch on her for Team at 2020. That's the first part of the race done and dusted. So the Pavé Sprint and the Aqueduct Queen of the Mountains came in rapid succession. And now, I wouldn't want to say there's a bit of a lull, because there's a few riders here at the moment, Hannah, who've been tailed off on that climb. There's only a shortish sort of climb, but a few riders already in a lot of difficulty.
Yeah, there is 10 riders in this front group, more or less, and a few riders, couple of seconds off the back with around another 10 riders. So if they can get together, work well together, they can get back to this front group of riders. Just trying to look further down the pack to see where the likes of Dame Sarah Story are.
Well, that explosion, as you said, has really split things up. The first 25 riders spread over about 3 or 4 seconds, but all the riders you can see at the moment highlighted, well, that's a real stark illustration, Hannah, isn't it, into the strength and depth of Team Hino. Vicky Neelan, Cecilia Hansen, Vicky Whitelaw, Alice Lethbridge and Caroline Williams, again, all making sure they're in this front group. They don't just ride well individually, but as has been seen over the last 6 weeks, coming into race number 7, they are such a close-knit formation. They've set the bench very, very high in terms of women's racing on Zwift, haven't they?
Incredibly high, and not even just the women's racing, also across the board, even for the men's racing, to have all 5 riders represented in this group for such a fast start. Collectively, the way they communicate together, the way they race together, the way they've got it really solid, that it is, both riders there picking up points in the Queen of the Mountain, but that leaves the other riders just to follow the wheels a little bit, get a little bit of a respite, and then they can pick up points on the back end. So it's not always left to just one rider to pick up the points. They share it out collectively, and then in the final, we've seen before, it's kind of almost like we all go for a mass sprint towards the finish line. Let's pick up as many points as possible. The tactic that they've deployed week in, week out has been phenomenal.
It certainly has. There's a lot to, once this league is done and dusted, I think a lot of the other teams will go back to the drawing board, try and learn a little bit from Hino Racing, and also learn from their own mistakes, what they've done right, because this is the first iteration of the Zwift Racing League. As I said in the introduction, this is going to be the brand new home of e-racing on Zwift, isn't it? But I'm so happy that anybody within the Zwift community can have a look at this and think, do you know what? I want to race. I want to race at this kind of top level, or even just race at a community level. It really is a very inclusive sort of league, and it's aspirational as well, isn't it? It really is something very, very special, and I'm interested to see how it's going to develop over the next couple of years, especially with this team time trial format, which again helps in your understanding of riding on Zwift, doesn't it?
It certainly does, but also you get a clear understanding and a clear look at all the teams and their strengths and weaknesses. So having the team time trial every alternate weeks, and then the points / scratch race, you have to be good all round as a team. You can't just be good at one style of racing. So yeah, incredibly exciting to see how it develops and how it forms over the next few years. And I think for those teams and riders in the community league, they can watch this initial racing league, this Premier Division, and start to learn the tips and tricks. They'll have a few weeks off before the next iteration. So incredibly exciting how they can learn from these top teams racing.
It certainly is. It's all about not necessarily winning the races, although there is an immense amount of prestige from an individual perspective of winning a race. But as I said, this is a points-based league, and if your team wants to survive and stay another season in this league, they've got to work together as a unit, haven't you, in the team time trials and here on the open road in these races. And this points race format, it is essentially a scratch race, so first across the line wins the race, but from a team perspective, it's the team on the night that accumulates the most points. Now there's 30 points across the line for the winning rider, and the top 30 riders score points all the way down to 30th place. But the reason they're sprinting for these intermediate sprints as well is because on the Queen of the Mountains and at the hotspot sprints, for want of a better word, there's 3 2-1 points as well. So a team might not necessarily get riders in the top 3 overall on the night, but if they score on the intermediate points and they have as many riders as possible in the top 30, you're going to give your team more of a chance of actually finishing highly on the night.
Yeah, you certainly are. And maybe some of those teams who realise we don't pack a punch, or we don't want to go for the intermediates, we're going to lay it all down for the final, and play it quite risky, but we want to try and score as many points as possible. Try and if you score within the top 3, there's big points differences between 5 between each of the top 3. That could play a lot, and there's a lot of energy saved in comparison to where you have to sprint for each of the intermediates. So depends what tactic each team are going to deploy.
That certainly does. Well, the teams, we're coming up to the Ballon sprint now. That came up very, very quickly, and Dave Godby again is on the offensive. She's sprinting so well. Lethbridge coming up there from Team Hino, very, very close. Lots of power-ups being dropped just for that sprint. A real concentration of effort in this first part of the race, that first 11 Ks, but there it is, Godby ahead of Lethbridge, and then Paulus there for Team 2020, again up in the mix as well. Second, third place in a row for the American, again one of the 3 riders from 2020 selected for the UCI World Esports Championships in just a couple of weeks' time, and that is the situation on the night so far. Well, I say unsurprisingly, again, just an illustration of their utter dominance so far. 7 points for Hino, 6 for Vision E-Racing, 2 points for No Pins R3R, and then 2020 with 2 and Cryo with 1. And a little bit of news in from out, just looking at this clutch of riders on the front. We've only actually got, Hannah, around 28 riders in this front group. Such with the ferocity of the pace that they went up the first Queen of the Mountains, this group has split, and there's a big group. There's one rider, Hayley Gill of Velocity. She's at 8 seconds on her own, and then we've got 33 seconds to basically the main field here. So it just shows the sort of pace that's been set early in this race.
It does, and you look at Sarah Story. She's been distanced from this group. She's 56 seconds behind. So even with the immense power that she has, and an incredible time trial, is an exceptionally strong and powerful rider, unable to match the speed and the way that this race is being played out here in the front group. So I think it just shows how good this front group really is.
Well, there is Melanie Mora on the front. Indeed, it is a really, really classy group. It's all the usual suspects as well. As you said, Dame Sarah Story is an amazing athlete. Came, of course, from swimming before she went over to cycling, both on the road and on the track. But again, can take a little bit of time. If you haven't raced on Zwift for a while, it can take a little bit of time to bed in. And again, it's not any kind of measure of disrespect at all to road riders who come across and don't quite get it. It is a very, very different effort. Now, we've got a little bit of time now, Hannah. We can take a little bit of a breath. And again, we want to bring in people who've never seen this before and are wondering kind of what they're looking at. We talk about power-ups. The power-ups in Zwift, so important. It's part of the gamification element. It's one of the parts of Zwift that separates it from other disciplines in the sport. Just explain briefly what power-ups are, Hannah, and how they're used in-game.
Yeah, well, we've got 6 different power-ups being able to be used in this racing league. You'll see the power-ups, they'll be like a little a glowing disc above the riders' heads, and you'll be able to pick up those power-ups at each of the intermediate or Queen of the Mountain arches or banners. And we've got the lightweight feather, which makes you lighter by 10% for 15 seconds. We've also got the draft, which increases your draft by 50% for 30 seconds. So you probably want to be using this at high speeds, make it a lot easier to sit within the bunch. We've got the aero boost, makes you more aero for by 15%, reduces that the CDA by 25%. And we've got the invisibility, so makes you invisible to any other rider for 10 seconds. We've got the burrito, which is lasts for 10 seconds, makes you undraftable to the riders who are in a 2.5 meter radius around you. And we've got the anvil, which is incredibly exciting for this course, makes you heavier for 30 seconds. So if you want to get into a super tuck on the descent of the non-classified climb, you could make you go extra fast and get into that super tuck. Be a good one to use.
Well, I've never actually used it. This is going to be the first time we understand. Just in our introduction, our producer was telling us that a few anvils had been dropped early on some of the subtle downhill sections. It's certainly not a power-up you'd want to use at the wrong time on a climb. Imagine hitting your power-up button, your space bar or whatever you use, and ending up being a third heavier. An absolute nightmare. But I quite like that jeopardy element of it. But generally speaking, of course, the riders will know the sort of power-up they've got. That will be indicated on the screen for them. And they're given out randomly on the course. And there are 5 points on the course today that the riders can pick up a power-up. And that is through all of the intermediate arches. So the Queen of the Mountains arches and the sprint arches. They'll pick up a new power-up. They can either get rid of it as soon as they want, if they'd like to, or use it strategically, either to try and get away, or even the draft power-up, Hannah, you could use just to get a little bit of recovery.
Yeah, you could, and it's worth noting as well that some of these power-ups are actually event only, so the likes of the cloak and the invisibility and the burrito and the anvil. So it's event only. You can't just use it in the normal world of Zwift when you're training.
I'll let you sort out your little screen there. I'll carry you sort yourself out there, Hannah. Don't you worry about that. But yeah, sometimes we do get technical issues at home. We're all working apart, aren't we? But no, we're just heading almost to kind of heading towards the half distance point. Still a long way to go on this course. 25.4 Ks. Again, a real interesting course. Now, there is a big climb, but it's not actually categorized. And that comes about 2/3 of the way through. They actually start climbing at about 26 Ks. We see Lou Bates attacking. This is an interesting little move. She's been brought straight back to heel, unsurprisingly there, by Kristin Kulczynski. Kulczynski now moves to the front. She has been one of the most consistent riders, a real revelation. Talk a little bit more about Kristin Kulczynski as we look at the No Pins R3R e-racing team. Lou Bates, again, the rider that just went on the attack. Julia Decker, Theo Gutschke and Meka van der Plas from the Netherlands. And then Deb Stockley rounding out the No Pins R3R racing team. Lovely kit as well. And they've got several riders in that front group. But Lou Bates has been a real revelation. And as I said, she's representing Great Britain in the forthcoming World Championships. So for many of the riders here, as we said before, this is a really, really crucial workout because there's not that many times, not that many opportunities within a year racing on Zwift and all of the various iterations of racing that we have to race for this kind of length of time. So it's a key workout, isn't it?
And I think also racing against some of the riders you'll see in the World Championships as well, to see how you compare against them. Also, the last chance as well to see what tactics you're able to play, how long you're able to sustain those efforts for. So yeah, it's incredibly exciting. Although the focus tonight will be firmly on this racing league, it's a great opportunity to see against this distance. As we said before, it's only just shy of 3 kilometers less than what they will be racing in Watopia for the World Championships, and to get the coveted rainbow jersey.
Oh, it's going to be amazing. I'm very much looking forward to these races. Of course, we've got 2 more races in this series to come. We're going to have we're coming, just as you can see, a little flag there, 23.9 k's to go, just coming up to around half distance. Now, I reconned this route this morning. It took me around about an hour and a half, to be perfectly honest with you. A little bit longer than I thought, but this particular section is a little bit discombobulating. Lots of changes of direction in and out, and essentially on the map, as you look at it from a bird's eye view, we're actually heading back towards the start, but we get just towards the outskirts of the town where we finish later on, and then we swing a left and essentially start climbing up the slopes of Mont Ventoux, although we don't go, thankfully, in this race all the way to the top. So Hansen on the front here. Looks like Team Haino are taking things up a little bit here. This is a very interesting situation on the front. Neil and Hansen and Williams there. What is the situation here? This is very, are they just trying to rip things apart here? This is absolutely fascinating to see. We did wonder, didn't we, at the start, whether we would see a team really try and set that ferocious pace just to try and disrupt the rhythm of everybody else.
Well, that was incredible. All 5 riders from Haino on the front. I was wondering actually if they were going to sort of go into a team time trial formation, put the other riders and teams on the back foot and really, drill it through these hairpins. It's all come back together again, but I think just to be on the front foot over the other riders, incredibly important, and to have 5 in this front group still, when other teams, only have 1 or 2 riders.
Indeed. Well, that's Cécile Lejeune. Just see for ZCC, look at you can just see the kind of power that she's having to put out. She's actually quite a light rider. She's putting out, she's hovering at around 300 watts. They're dropping a bit down, but the key indicator for me, not just the power they're putting out, but the heart rate there, 182. Even if you think that she might have a maximum heart rate of about 200, she is really working very, very hard. These shots of the riders' pain caves give you a real insight, not just to the metrics, but physically to the amount of effort they're having to put out. This is very, very hard.
Yeah, and also just looking at the speed, it's consistently been 47, 48 and above 50 kilometers per hour over the last 10 kilometers. So exceptionally fast speeds, with the style of the course, no climbing, very, very flat, and it lends itself to the nature of those riders who are punchy, they're powerful. Also, which riders are able to really make the most of the draft and sort of surf through the wheels in the bunch as well.
Yeah, exactly. You can just see Hannah Peel there, one of the riders from TFC, the team in the yellow. Just on the right hand side there, the rider from Great Britain. It looks as if she is the only representative from her squad. There are other team members, Rebecca Seal, Marina Larson, Hannah Peel and Fred Haight. But this is where the road starts to rise now. This is a long, gradual climb. And a reminder, I was actually fooled this morning. I thought it was a Queen of the Mountains, King of the Mountains at the top. But there are no points off. But that doesn't at all negate the fact that this is going to be a hard climb. And any of the teams here that want to put pressure on the riders can ride this hard. And I'm expecting this group to split. And there we go. Kuczynski and Gardner now going to the front.
Eilidh Gardner, an incredible climber from Great Britain, 21 years of age. But Kuczynski just out the saddle, pushing a very, very big gear, very low revs per minute. But Eilidh Gardner just opening up a slight gap to her rivals. And this could be a moment, I mean, we spoke about this before, Matt, this could be, although there's no points available, a time to really split the bunch, the opportunity for those climbers to put the sprinters into the red zone, into damage, and stop them from getting back on. They'll want to try and shell them before they get towards the finish line.
Well, Gardner absolutely flying here, happy to set a really, really ferocious tempo. Look at that, 5.9 watts a kilo. That is quite astonishing, frightening stats that she's putting out. But again, no strangers to success. The rider from the KRT squad, the KISS racing team, one of the teams on the Zwift platform in the community race that has been around for a very, very long time. One of the longest serving community teams riding here at the highest level. And it was Eilidh Gardner of Great Britain who took out the opening round of the inaugural Zwift Racing League back in Watopia 5 or 6 weeks ago now, but now she's been overtaken. Vine and Williams and Gardner now moving to the front, but Hannah, this group is starting to thin down now. A couple of the riders now at the back really starting to pay.
Yeah, just from those efforts, we've seen 3 or 4 riders being dropped. Vicky Whitelaw of Hino, one of those riders who's just over 2 seconds behind. So just shows the effort from Eilidh Gardner, the damage it's done to the other riders. And this is good news for the other riders. Means Hino only have 4 riders in the group. I'm sure Vicky Whitelaw fighting to get back on.
Well, it doesn't look much, this climb. There's a bit of a plateau here, but the road does actually kick up. It kind of maxes out. This particular climb, again, although not categorized, actually does kick up to around 8%. There's sections of 7-8% as you get to the top. And one of the worst things about the final part of this climb is you can almost see it for a kilometre in front, just as the road kicks up, then swings to the left-hand side. They're just on another little bit of a steeper section here. You can just see the numbers start to creep up. Gardner, Williams, 6.6 watts a kilos here. This is some real strong riding. That little sign on the left-hand side they just rode past, that actually says 19 kilometres to go to the top of Mont Ventoux. And there is the long straight that I'm talking about. The road just rears up in front of them as we look at the stats of the Israeli Antonio Reznikov. 311 watts here. Riders really starting to struggle here. A couple of featherweight power-ups been used. Good bit of timing. That's the kind of power-up you want on this particular section of road, Hannah.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I think for any of those riders who were already going into that red zone, who were already suffering with the pace and the intensity, this lightning fast pace on this climb will not be good news to their ears. But Antonina Reznikov, we saw she's in good form. A bronze medalist in the Israeli National Road Race Championships just a few days ago, was won by Omer Shapira. But Antonina Reznikov, incredible result for her.
Now Shapira, of course, riding for Canyon SRAM. I think she's won that 3 times in a row now. Again, no stranger herself, not racing tonight, but a regular racer on Zwift. And look at this. This is a big surprise to see Whitelaw out of the back here. This is the group, the second group on the road. That is a big surprise to see Vicky Whitelaw out of the back, still putting out just under 300 watts here, just showing showing the depth in strength, but just showing the level that these riders have to be at to even just stay in the front group, because Whitelaw, one of the finest riders on the Zwift platform.
Yeah, it's very surprising to see Whitelaw just struggling to stay with the pace. Likewise with Katie Banerjee of Aero as well, Anna Embring and Natalie Stevenson in that group, as is Foy Gutschke, the German rider racing for No Pins R3R. But if these riders can get them together, they can start to get back on. But no one will want to bring Vicky Whitelaw of Hino back to that leading group.
Exactly, and ironically, it's Caroline Williams, her teammate, is putting out 6.9 watts a kilo, just coming towards the top of this climb. Caroline Williams absolutely flying up this climb. Remember, she was the winner of round 5 back on the Everything Bagel in New York, and she's really taking this race to the other riders. It's Lou Bates who's trying to come across the gap there in the blue and red of No Pins R3R racing team. The road just swings round to the left-hand side. They'll go through the arch. No points on offer here, as we said before, but now we've got a really fast downhill of around 2 or 3 kilometres. I'm wondering here, Hannah, will we see the anvil deployed? Has anybody got the anvil as they go underneath the arches here? But a good performance here by Williams, who really has the bit between her teeth. Bates should get across there, and then 4 seconds to third place on the road. Good move here.
Yeah, brilliant move here, and that is the question. Has anyone got that all-exclusive Anvil power-up? Bates has made it across to Williams, so we've got 2 riders out front. Eilidh Gardner of KISS Racing Team is leading that chase, with Neil on behind, just in the group with her, and Hansen. And Godby, Vine, Barrow, Powerless, all closing that gap from around 8 seconds back down to 4.5 seconds. So this group could all come back together, but this is in the best interest of Lou Bates and Williams to work together, as we see just the immaculate style of Lou Bates, ever just turning those gears ever so comfortably in her pain cave.
Yeah, do you know what? I mean, and looking at the power that she's knocked down, again, it's harder to generate power on a downhill section anyway, as we just see Vicky Nealon just getting into that super tuck. Once they reach speeds of 60 kilometers an hour on these descents, if the rider actually freewheels on their bike, on their turbo trainer, and they're going over a certain speed, they get into a super tuck, and it's one of the few opportunities on this course, Hannah, to get a little bit of a micro rest. So I think we'll see a few little super tucks taking place on this descent. Although there are parts of the descent where you really do need to try and keep on top of the gears. But even look at Neelan there, you can see Neelan freewheeling. Great use of picture-in-picture there just to illustrate that little rest. And everybody here, virtually every woman on the course at the moment, getting into that super tuck. Great to see.
Yeah, brilliant. And as you say, one of the only places on this course to have a bit of a respite, to get a bit of recovery, take on some fluids, because the rest of the course, with it being so more or less flat, it's just, you know, the high pace on the pedals the whole time. You can't actually ease off the power to take a breather at all. But we already see just one rider just coming back onto this group, was briefly distanced. But Jackie Godby, everything's all back together now. Godby, and just look at how reduced this group is now after we've gone over that climb and down the descent. Just how much damage the climb has done.
It's done a lot of damage there, Hannah. As you said, we've got 14 riders in this front group, and then the next rider on the road is Kirsten Pohl from the KISS Racing team. But let's have a little look at the composition of this front group for you. We've got Brevine of, Alice Lethbridge of Hino, Melanie Mara of Cryo RDT, Lou Bates of No Pins, Barrow from Aero, Jackie Godby of Vision, Alice Illy Gardner of the KISS Racing team, Belforth of the team at Swedish Zwifters, Mora of Cryo, Reznikov of 2020, got two teammates with it in the form of Kulczynski, and she's also got Shayna Powless there, and that pretty much is our leading group of 14 riders who now have a lead of 21 seconds. Brevine also there as well. Brevine, very, very classy bike rider indeed, just towards the back of that group. But I think with a gap of 20 seconds now, Hannah, and about 3 kilometres to the next intermediate point, it is the Aqueduct KOM, or Queen of the Mountain, should I say. This group is looking pretty good because they are actually extending their lead now.
Yeah, looking very good, and it's going to be incredibly difficult for any of the riders behind the likes of Svadstrom or Pohl to try and get back into contention with this group. It's going to have to be, you know, a mighty effort to close this gap. But it should be that these 14 riders out front, 4 riders from Hino in this group, 2 from 2020, should make it to the Aqueduct, and I think this will be our composition for the finale. As we look at Group 2 here, they're all sharing the workload well, albeit much more reduced than the front group.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be quite that. They're still working hard here, but the gap has gone out pretty quickly. I mean, if they're going to shut the gap, they need to do it sooner rather than later. The longer it stays at 20 seconds, the harder it is going to become, unless, of course, the riders in front just decide just to knock things back a little bit. It's all about a bit of a numbers game at the front, of course. The first 30 riders over the line will score, but the more riders you can get towards the head of affairs, the more points you'll get collectively towards your team. And as we said before, this really is a team sport. Again, a lot of kudos, of course, to be first across the line, but more importantly is scoring points and riding as a collective unit. But 23 seconds now, 14.9 Ks to go, and only a couple of kilometres towards the next significant obstacle, and that is the Aqueduct Queen of the Mountains. But it's only 400 metres long. It's almost a sprint. There's hardly any really innovation, so it's a real punchy effort, isn't it?
Yeah, very punchy, average gradient of 5%, and it's one of those climbs where you could go from the very bottom, you can lead it, and as long as you have the power over the top, you can catch some riders by surprise. I think some of those riders who punch a kick are a bit more of a sprinter as opposed to a climber, can score and pick up points in this next Aqueduct Queen of the Mountain. Gain points across the line for 3, 2 and 1. The first 3 across the line.
It won't be long till they actually reach that point now. It's Illy Gardner again, happy to outride at or near the head of affairs. As we look at Justine Barrow there, you can just see her out of the saddle there, making sure she's hydrated. All these riders will make sure they've got plenty of fluids to hand. They'll make sure they're hydrated before they get on their bikes, and all of them will make sure that they're as well ventilated as they can. And again, hydration, we know in Zwift racing, Hannah, is so important, but when you're racing over an hour, it is even more important to get it right, because if you're dehydrated towards the back end of a race, your performance just drops straight through the floor, doesn't it?
It certainly does, and it's not even just the couple of hours before the race. It's, you know, throughout the day, the days before, making sure that you're well hydrated. You know, you've got enough energy stores, and you've eaten well. But also, for racing over an hour at this intensity, you might want to have something like energy within the drink, or even take on a gel throughout the race, just to replace the stores a little bit, and to give you enough energy for the back end of the race. But incredibly important to remain hydrated for that performance factor. As Kulczynski, just look at the effort she's putting in now as she goes off the front, starts to make a slight gap, but hasn't done too much damage to the group. Paulus is with her on her wheel.
Well, Paulus has come across. She's kind of split things a little bit. There's a couple of riders really struggling just towards the back end of this group. Brevine and Belforth are actually 3 seconds adrift here. So Kristen Kulczynski, I mean, a real revelation. As we mentioned before, pre-selected for the American team for the forthcoming UCI World Esports Championships. And there she is again. She's had some sterling results so far. She was 5th in round 5, 2nd in round 3. And by trade, by day, she's a jewellery designer. And then by night, she is a Zwift impresario. And look at this dominance. Kulczynski and Paulus look like they're going to roll across the line for the penultimate intermediate points of the day. This, of course, is the Aqueduct Queen of the Mountains. And is it going to be Paulus and Kulczynski? Or Maura isn't quite going to take that. But again, a real dominant performance there by Team 2020, taking valuable points away from Team Heino there.
Great teamwork there from 2020. Paulus, as ever, has been present in more or less all of the intermediates so far, and I think the way they've played that, just got a few extra points on the board. Paulus taking the 3, Kulczynski with the 2, and it is confirmed Maura with the 1 on that Aqueduct Queen of the Mountain. Everything all back together now. Heino were the riders, the team who were leading that chase to close it back to 2020 and Maura.
Indeed. Well, that was an interesting little effort there from Kulczynski. Certainly did the trick in terms of scoring points, but that's the situation on the night. Heino Racing Team still lead, but they're equal on points in relation to the intermediate points out on the road with Team 2020. So neck and neck so far, and that's the situation that we kind of expect in this race. We knew that 2020 were going to really try and bring their A game, because somebody's got to try and disrupt the kind of the dominance of Team Heino. What can we do? What can the other teams do in the finish here? Remember, Heino have a couple of riders in this front group. They've got Hansen and Lethbridge there. 2020 have 3 in the form of Rezhnikov, Kulczynski and Paulus. Vision have got Jackie Godby. The KISS Racing Team have Illy Gardner from Great Britain. Team Swedish Zwifters in that lovely blue and white kit. They have Emma Belforth, who again will be representing Sweden in the World Championships. Also there is Melanie Maura from Cryo RDT. 2 from Aero in the form of Brevine and Justin Barrow. So that is the composition, should I say, of the group out in front. And I would say that it's Team 2020 who are in the best position at the moment.
Very good position, and as you said just a moment ago, actually good to see a team getting together. How can we beat Heino? How can we get up on them on the points factor, and the way that they've been racing into this next sprint, Matt. Lethbridge off the front here.
Well, Lethbridge off the front, but coming up very, very closely indeed is Jackie Godby. It looks like Godby's going to take this one. Great riding. She's been very, very strong today, using a Powerup just at the right time. It looked like Lethbridge took 2nd, Illy Gardner in 3rd there. We'll get confirmation of that. But Godby, well, she has been absolutely flying tonight. Very, very confident. There's confirmation. Godby from Lethbridge from Illy Gardner. And what will that affect in relation to the overall points scored? That is the final intermediate classification done and dusted, and now we have just under 11 kilometres to go to the finish line, and it looks like there's an attack here from Celia Hansen. Textbook stuff, but Vision E-Racing now. That is the situation on the night. Vision equal 9 points with Heino, 20 drop into 3rd position with 7, no pins with 2, sharing the same points as Cryo, then KISS Racing Team with 1 solitary point. So great racing by Vision to move themselves up there, equal first so far with Heino.
Yeah, it just shows, how it can change from intermediate sprint to the Queen of the Mountain, that Vision E-Racing closed that gap. They're now equal points with Heino, and it's going to be down into the finish for 2020. How can they try and pick up maximum points? Godby keeping that high res per minute, 105, so keeping a nice cadence, solid upper body, lots of hydration on board as well.
Yeah, making sure there's no expense spared, not taking any chances at all now. Jackie Godby at all, making sure she's hydrated. The American has ridden very, very well tonight, but a bit of a correction in relation to the composition of the riders out in front. It's 3 from Team 2020, Franco, Reznikov, Kulczynski and Paulus, and 3 as well from the most dominant team so far. It is Team Hino, and that is Celia Hansen, Alice Lethbridge and Caroline Williams. Of course, Williams, who won a couple of weeks back in New York City. Now this is where, I mean, we've got around 9.5 Ks to go now as we again look back at Lethbridge, but this is where communication is going to be key, and we haven't really talked too much about the communication side of things. But again, Hannah, just talk us through how these teams will be communicating with each other. It won't be just them; they'll have a team manager as well, won't they?
They will. Each team will have a sports director or a manager in their ears, talking the tactics through and just letting them know what the situation on the road is. It's incredibly difficult as a rider when you're going through such an intensity to keep an eye on everything that's going on, and also the points that are being scored. All these riders will be hooked up with via different communication methods, whether it's Discord or WhatsApp or another style of communication, just talking things through, letting each other know, how they're feeling, what they want to go for, how what the next part of their tactic will be within the team. How are we going to be able to score maximum points? Also, the team manager just letting them know, remember, for this finish, this is what happens. We've got the final right hand bend. It's only 75 meters to the finish line, so he'll be giving the information that make sure you're positioned well, make sure you open up your sprint nice and early. Don't wait to see, as you normally would, to see the finish line. You've got to start and open up well before you get there. And for those teams who might not have a sprinter and only a climber or rouleur, how are we going to be able to escape the pack?
No, definitely. And of course, the riders who are there on their own in this group, Emma Belfour from Team Swedish Zwifters, Illigarda from KISS, Jackie Godby, they're on their own, and they're facing the might of 3 riders from 2020 and the equal might of 3 riders from Team Hino as well. A team with a bit of an advantage, of course, is Aero in that Aussie kit. That's a green, white and yellow kit. That's Brie Vine and Justin Barrow. And the last 2 individuals in this front group, which looks as if it's going to be the group that we're going to find the winner from today. That's Melanie Mora of Cryo RDT, who was 6th, in fact, in round number 1. And, well, Lou Bates, who won round 3, was 2nd in round 1. She has been so consistent. And a few of these riders here have got a real punch as well. But I'm expecting, again, would you expect as well, Hannah, that the teams with numerical dominance will either try and set a really ferocious pace or put a rider up the road and force the others to chase just to see what happens, to give the other riders a bit of a rest? The tactics we see in Zwift Racing and on the road as well. So it's going to be kind of textbook stuff here. Or is a team going to try and use the element of surprise?
I think for Hino, the way that they've been able to dominate in other races where it's finished in a reduced one sprint and still score highly, they can leave it until the finish line. But for me, why take that chance? Why take the risk? Let's try and send a rider up the road. We'll force another team to use their riders, use the energy, waste the energy, and force them to chase. And it means, if it all comes back together, other teams are already on the back foot and we're in a strong position still. But I think for 2020, with the 3 riders they've got, with Shayna Paulus and Reznikov, Kulczynski, the punch that Kulczynski packs, and Shayna Paulus, taking her experience and knowledge from road racing and UCI road racing, I think it could be exceptionally valuable.
It's going to be very exciting. We've got 7.2 Ks to go. This is the penultimate round of the very first Zwift Racing League. It is the home of racing on Zwift now. I'm sure we'll see over the coming seasons, maybe the formats will change a little bit. I'm sure the racing will evolve. But first off the bat, this has been a fascinating series. Teams are learning a lot about themselves, and this wonderful format of the points race and the team time trial, I think, really has worked. And we'll see indeed what Zwift have got lined up for us for the next couple of iterations, and we'll see 3 new teams as well come into this league for the next season, which I believe will be just after Christmas or around that time. We're looking at around 3 or 4 seasons within a year, giving plenty of opportunity for teams to move up from within the divisions. And of course, within the divisions themselves, they're regional throughout the world as well, and there's a tiered system depending on the ability and the status of the teams. And within those particular divisions, teams can actually go up and down. So it's really fluid, really organic. But primarily, there's something for everybody, and that is what is really fascinating about the Zwift Racing League. It really is exciting, as is the finish going to be today, because for the very first time, if 2020 racing, just looking at the numbers here today, 2020, if they get it right, Hannah, could pull off a coup and break the deadlock of Team Heino, of course. As a reminder, Team Heino have won everything. They've won the first 6 rounds of this competition, 3 team time trials, 3 points races. They lead with 120, but 2020 have been so consistent. Could this be the night that they pull it off?
Well, the way that they're racing tonight, it really could be the night that a team beats the dominance of Team Heino. Williams now just wanting to go off the front as we say that, but for 2020, ever consistent. They had, a slightly bad first race with only scoring 16 points on the night, but the way that they've raced within the team time trials and these scratch races, incredible.
That certainly is. They've got better and better. And one thing you need if you're going to perform well in a league, in a team-based league, is consistency, trust within the team as well, knowing each other's strengths and weaknesses, trying to ride as a unit, and that's what 2020 have managed to do very, very well tonight, along with Heino. They, again, as a reminder, 3 riders from Team Heino in this front group. They lead. They've dominated the Zwift Racing League so far, but 2020 with Antonio Reznikov, Christian Kulczynski and Shayna Powless in this group. And as you said, that maybe that little bit of extra road experience. Shayna Powless, an exceptionally good rider. She's got a real punch at the finish as well. Maybe that will be enough. But an interesting point that you raised a few moments ago, Hannah, is this finish. We've both reconned this ride, and the finish, obviously the riders will get the same countdown as we do. For the last 100 metres, they'll know when it's 500, 400, 300 to go. But still, even when you factor that in, you need to know where the finish is here. Because as you said, you've got this long, you come under the bridge, swing left, 700 metres to go. But it's only 75 metres to go. There's a hard right-hander when the finish line comes into sight. So you have to have done your homework, and you have to regularly communicate with your DS. And I've expected that these riders would have reconned this several times to make sure they get this finish right.
Yeah, they will. And also, looked at the road book to see when do they need to start opening up, what power up have they got as well going into this finish, because it's going to be exceptionally fast finish. All those riders will want to have the aero power up, make them as aerodynamic as possible, but it's all about the timing of when you start your sprint, when you open it up, when you drop the power up, and also having the positioning within the bunch. With only 13 riders in this front group right now, you also don't want to be leading it out either. You want to try and come off the back of one of the riders' wheels, but not be at the back of the group. So much to think about going into this finish with 4.2 kilometers to go.
It certainly is, and it's a flat, pretty fast running. All of the intermediate sprints are done and dusted. It is now just over 4 kilometers to go in this round 7. It is the Petite Boucle, but the racing, it has been far from petit, and it has been grand all day long so far. Coming up to nearly an hour of racing. It has been fast, it has been furious, it has been relentless, it has been attritional, and we have a field now that has been whittled down to only 12 riders in the front group, and with just under 4k to go before all hell breaks loose, let me remind you who's in the front group. Emma Belforth of Sweden from Team Swedish Swifters is there. We have Illy Gardner of Great Britain riding for the KISS Racing team in that dark blue, orange and light blue kit. Jackie Godby is there from Vision E-Racing, the blue kit with the white stripe. 3 riders from Team 2020 in the form of Antonio Reznikov, Christian Kulczynski of the United States and Shayna Powless. They're in the light blue and green kit. 3 riders from the dominating team of Team Heino, all in the red. One rider from No Pins, that is Lou Bates. 2 riders from Aero in the white and yellow kit, that is Brevine and Justin Barrow. And the final rider rounding out our group of 12 out in front is Melanie Mora of Cryo RDT. One of those riders is going to win the individual on the night, but crucially, which team is going to be able to accumulate most points? It could come down, couldn't it, Hannah, to the points scored out on the road, because with 3 and 3 in this front group, this is going to be very, very close.
It's going to be incredibly close. And if we just look at the points scored for the first riders across the line at the finish line, we've got 40 for first place, 35 for second, 30 for third, and then from fourth down to 30th, it's all separated by 1 point from 27 down to 1. So will be also, important to score and try and get within the top 3.
But what's important as well, I think, as we head in under 3 kilometres to go now, what's important as well is that the racing doesn't just end with this front group. Okay, they're battling it out for the win here and for the maximum points, but the riders behind, remember the first 30 score, it could be that the difference is made with the riders that are about 30-40 seconds down the road. So every single rider on the road who's riding within the first 30 has got to ride hell for leather and really, really go for it. So even the group behind, it's going to play into what happens in terms of our overall result and ultimately the winning team tonight.
And this is where the communication aspect comes into play with the team managers, the sports directors, even the riders who've already crossed the finish line and the race is done, to let their teammates behind know, sprint for everything you've got, make sure you try and pick up those points because it's going to be exceptionally close, especially for the likes of 2020 and Team Hino.
No, it is going to be absolutely amazing, this finish. Just crossing over the bridge here, Kulczynski now moves to the front. Shayna Paulus not too far away as well. They're moving at 45 k's an hour, roughly. A little bit more, in fact, along this section. 2 kilometres to go as we just cross over this little cobble bridge. You can just see the spire of the church, as that's the town they're going to be heading into in a few moments' time. They'll get the kilometre to go board in around 900 metres. They'll then pass underneath a bridge. Then they will swing left, and then there's around 600 or 700 metres of pan flat straight. We'll go through the hoardings, then there's a sharp right-hander, and the finish line, as we said before, only comes into the rider's vision with around 75 metres to go. So knowledge of this course, absolutely crucial, and crucially as well, what power-ups have these riders got left? They certainly won't want to use the anvil, that is for sure. The favoured power-up for a sprint finish, of course, with 1,600 metres to go is the aero power-up, which improves your drag coefficient by, for 15 seconds by 25%. Here's the first of the 2 bridges before we head into the finish line. Still all together. Nobody's gone long so far, Hannah.
Now, everyone keeping it's very cagey, very tactical game going on. No rider or team wanting to take it on towards the front. I can just see Justine Barrow of Aero just playing it cagey in 3rd position. She's just on the left-hand side of the screen with the white jersey and the green and yellow stripes. But Williams, Hino has gone off the front. She's opened up a slight gap over Brevine.
Well, there we go. This is Caroline Williams. She's used a feather power up, and even on the flat, that can give you a little bit of an advantage. If it's the only power up you've got left, that can help with that initial acceleration when you really kick up. But Vine has managed to shut the gap down here from Team Aero. Vine gets onto a wheel. Another bridge they've just gone under. It's all come back together. Bates has brought things back together. Kulczynski is there. It looks as if we're going to be treated to a sprint royale here on the Petite Boucle. Week 7, round 7 of the Zwift Racing League coming to its conclusion. Fascinating stuff here, Hannah.
Yeah, Reznikov towards the front. Maura opening up a gap here to the riders. Williams from Hino, but where is the riders from 2020? They're gathering themselves with 400 metres remaining. 400
metres to go now. It's a big bunch sprint here. Godby is now on the front. Expect some power-ups to be used. The first riders to try and go clear now is Jackie Godby. She's riding off the front here for Vision. Belforth it is now in front, should I say. Belforth has gone clear and she's got the ideal power-up. He's going to turn right now, 75 metres to go. Looks like Belforth is going to take it. Oh, it's Bates going to come round on the line. Belforth just holds on. No, it's Bates. Bates looks like she might have just taken it, or was it Belforth? A photo finish there. Absolutely incredible finish there. We'll get confirmation of that in a moment. So tight on the line there, Hannah, but what a superb sprint. It came down to a sprint in the end. 1 or 2 riders tried to go for it early, but I think it was, in the end, it was Bates, I think, who just took it on the line. God, that was an amazing finish, Hannah.
It was, and played off for Bates. She was the only rider in this group from No Pins R3R. It made it, worthwhile for her to close that gap as a few riders started to go off the front. Timed that to perfection. Rode off the back of the Belforth's wheel to be able to, use the draft from her and come round as we get a replay of just how the sprint unfolded. You can see Bates just sitting nice and tight.
So Bates here sitting nice and tight. This is just before the left-hander. Sorry to cut across you there, Hannah. Paulus just in the middle there. Riders just waiting. And actually, I would say they left this one pretty late. It was as if they were almost afraid to go too early. And they started to open it up. You can just see generally a good indicator of when the riders start the sprint isn't just the fact that they're picking up the pace. It's when you see this kind of all the power up starting to be dropped. That is the point when they open up the sprint. And this is the point when Belforth went very, very long indeed, didn't she? Fifth, the Swedish Zwifter representing her country in the World Championship. She went very, very early on. At this point here, it looked as if she'd just done enough, but it was Lou Bates just dropping that draft power up just at the right time to take her on the line. And when you think about it, using the draft power up, that is the one that you needed, because you get that benefit of being on the rider's wheel. Perfect effort and perfect use of a power up there for Lou Bates. Superb stuff.
It was, but with Emma Belforth, she opened up and she used that aero power-up very early, and it actually ran out before she got to the final right-hander. So for Lou Bates, the draft power-up was perfect.
Well, there we go. Lou Bates takes the win here on round 7 of the Zwift Racing League. Brevine is in second place there for Team Aero. Belforth, who looked like she may have got it, has to settle for third place. Shada Paulus in fourth, the first rider for Team 2020. Justin Barrow in fifth. Jackie Godby, one of the main animators of the race tonight for Vision E-Racing, in sixth. Illy Gardner in seventh place there for KRT, the only representative from that squad. And look at that, 5.1 watts a kilo. That's a very, very powerful ride from her. Kuczynski of 2020 in 8th. Cecilia Hansen, the first rider significantly home for Team Hino. And then rounding out the top 10, the Israeli from Team 2020, Antonia Reznikov. And that's 3 riders from 2020 in the top in the top 10 there. There are the points. Lou Bates takes 40 for that win, Vine with 35. I'm not going to even attempt to do any rudimentary mathematics here, Hannah, but Paulus there with 30. And as you can see, the points there from 4th place onwards drop 1 point incrementally. So crucially today, well, it does look to me as if Shada Paulus, Krolczynski and Reznikov may have done enough. Our team back at Zwift headquarters are currently doing some very serious number crunching. There's a few riders still to finish, but that was a great race, wasn't it? The longest of the series so far, but it went in the blink of an eye, Hannah.
It did, and the speed and the average speed was exceptionally fast. But interesting to me, when we look at this top 10, only one rider from Hino who got into the top 10, and only 22 points scored for Cecilia Hansen. If you look at the likes of Brevine, Justine Bauer from Aero, and then the 3 riders from 2020 in the top 10, could we see the dominance on Hino come to an end after 6 overall team victories in this series so far?
Well, there we go. That's the team points on the night. Yeah, Team 2020, they amassed 81 points on the night. So the stranglehold of Team Hino has gone. They will have to concede. Team 2020, bunch more riders in the top 10, accumulated more points, and there it is, 81 on the night. Hino in second with 76, close behind, solid performance there by Aero with 72. No pins in 4th there with 54, of course helped immensely by the win of Lou Bates and the 40 points that she got there. Great riding again by Team Swedish Zwifters. I always say Swedish. I feel like the chef of the Muppets. Team Swedish Zwifters in 5th there with 52 points. Kiss Racing Team there in 5th place. And then we have 11th Evok, 12th TFC, 13th Saris and the Pros Closet. And rounding out our 14 teams on the line tonight, Team Turbo with 1 solitary point. So, what a race that was. Breathless stuff. That was wonderful racing. And again, when you look at the Petite Boucle course, you look at it first and foremost, it's not the most brutal course, one of the most brutal courses we have on Zwift. It's got its undulations, it's got its short climbs. But sometimes, just with the gentle undulations and the flatness, you get a different sort of physiological effort. And it's almost like a semi-TT effort with intervals, which suits a particular sort of rider.
Yeah, as you say, the climbs don't really do too much damage, although we saw that the group was whittled down, but it's more the sheer pace and intensity of this course that puts the riders under pressure. If they're not able to, maintain that high pace, we saw it was, above 50 kilometers per hour consistently throughout the 47 kilometers. But also, as we mentioned and noted earlier, how could the intermediate sprints and the points collected from the teams and the riders there affect the overall standings on the night? And they did. It really came into the play that they were crucial for the teams to score in the intermediate sprints and not leave it only to the finish line.
You have to be, if you want to do well in the Zwift Racing League, you can't just sit back and wait for the finish. Although that is one tactic if you've got a lot of good sprinters, but basically you have to get out there, you have to be aggressive to accumulate those points. And quite often, if you're aggressive, that provides the catalyst for really difficult racing as well. So it's been fascinating to unfold all of the women's racing, all of the racing, in fact, has been so exciting. But I think the women, when you compare both the sets of racing, their racing's been far more aggressive and, I'm going to put it out there, a little bit more exciting. The men's racing has been great, but the women have been really, really keen to go on the offensive and split things up early on, which I've really, really loved.
Yeah, and the way that the teams have been racing, trying to break the dominance of Hino, I think just the way that they've all come together with the different styles and the different types of riders. Some riders coming from off a road racing season into this Zwift Racing League. It's been incredible. But 2020, they've broken that dominance, and just in time for the UCI World Championships in a few weeks too.
Yeah, and of course it sets us up for, we've got of course the men's race to come very shortly. Let's have a little look at the overall standings in the Zwift Racing League, heading in to the final team time trial on the Watopia waistband next week. Of course, Dave Towell and Nathan Guerra will take you through that, but there is a situation. Again, 139 points to 128, but significantly, although of course Hino is still in the lead, 2020 have narrowed that gap a little bit. And I tell you what, Aero there in third. The battle between second and third is still very, very close indeed. It's difficult to see past first, second and third at all here, but a real battle for the first three places overall. Great riding as well by No Pins there with 117 points. Kiss in fifth. Cryo RDT in sixth, Evox 7th, Team Swedish Zwifters, got it right that time, Hannah in 8th, equal points with I Race Like a Girl, and Saris and the Pros Closet in 10th position. Hopefully we can see a little bit further down the order in relation to the teams battling for survival in the Zwift Racing League, because of course 3 teams dropped down from the Premier League. Oh, there's the situation. Well, Vision Racing have actually given themselves a bit of a cushion there, haven't they? Vision E Racing with 62. It doesn't look good for Turbo, Team Fearless and Velocity Vixen, but anything could happen in the final team time trial. I think for a lot of teams here at the top and at the bottom, that final team time trial is going to be nervous.
It certainly is, and I think coming into tonight's race, Vision E Racing knew they were under pressure, that they'd fall out of this Premier Division and they'd be, moving down the league into the Community Racing League. So they knew what they needed to do to try and get themselves and get points on that scoreboard. Jackie Godby of the USA doing an incredible job of that. But it looks like they've cemented their 13th place overall, and doesn't look like they'll be under any pressure for next week in the final race in the team time trial.
Indeed. Well, you can watch the team time trial, and next week Nathan Guerra will take you through that with Dave Towell on Monday. But we've got some more racing to come, haven't we? Breathless stuff. I needed a bit of a lie down, but without further ado, we need to head on to the men's race now, racing exactly at the same course. It's worth having a little bit of a look back at what happened last week, just to set the scene a little bit. Of course, the team that leads overall is still Canyon, but let's have a little look at last week's team time trial, which took place on the streets of London, and they popped out into Surrey as well. This was the course, the Great London Flat. Although it wasn't actually that flat, a few gentle undulations did actually put a couple of teams into quite a lot of difficulty. As you just roll through some of the teams that were racing there, looking at Team Aero at the moment, just passing down the mall. Vitus Pro Cycling actually has a little bit of a difficulty. They actually struggled to keep in formation here. Evoc rode a very, very good race as well, just inside the top 10. They actually set the early benchmark, rolling through the streets of London here, but the team that actually had it dialed for most, setting the fastest intermediate checks, were the Canyon Esports team. And as you can see, that was the first split. Aero very early on did set a very good pace, but McGlinchey there, who's been racing so well, had a bit of a dropout as well, which caused a lot of problems, and many teams really finding it hard to adapt to the changes of pace on these gentle undulations. But the teams crossing the line down the mall, one of the most iconic finishes, I think you'll agree, in the Zwift. That's Powerup, and a very, very good ride again. And the team that dominated, though, was Canyon Esports, ahead of Saris and the Pros Closet, ahead of Powerup Ceramic Speed. And that left the overall rankings looking like this. Canyon Esports with only a 5-point lead. So still everything to play for over today's race and the team time trial next week. Saris second with 110. Powerup Ceramic Speed in third with 101. Evok fourth with 92. Bolt Race Team in fifth with 91. Then we have Team Swedish Zwifters. They're sixth with 86. Kalas with 82. Aero, Vitus and Team Draft running out the top 10. Let's have a little look a little bit further down the men's league table, giving us an indication of the teams that are in a little bit of a pickle as we head towards the last couple of races, staring relegation in the face. Hopefully we'll move to those very, very shortly indeed. And as we said, the same for the women's race. There's a lot at stake, lots of jeopardy, lots to play for. The championship, really, when you look at that, Hannah, I mean, with only a lead of 5 points and 2 races to score, it could be any one of the top 3 teams that still wins this overall.
It can. All it takes is for one of these teams to have a bad night, not score very well. Anything could happen, and it could mean that they lose their position at the top of the league, or even drop out of a podium position. So all to play for. Anything could happen as we see the teams just further down the rankings.
Indeed. Well, last team at the moment is Team ADH with 16. Team Skyline there with 20. Trinity have 24 points, and then the Legion of Los Angeles there with 31. So really, it's looking as if there's going to be a little bit of a tussle between Trinity and the Legion of Los Angeles to save their spots, and also Team Skyline as well. So, yeah, a difficult tussle at the bottom, but that just makes it even more exciting. It means that every single team here has so much to race for. And as we saw in the women's race, teams have got to go on the offensive, got to get out and attack if they can, get those points to battle for survival, but also to try and upset the apple cart and try and be a little bit disruptive. And that's what we saw from a team 2020, the women's race. But again, it is the men's turn now. Let's have a look at some of the teams that we need to kind of look out for today, some of the teams to pick out ahead of today's race. They've already been racing for around 10 or 12 minutes. They started at 8 o'clock, but pick out a couple of names from here for us, Hannah.
Well, as always, Lionel Viarsin of Belgium racing for Canyon Esports will be a rider as well who will be representing Belgium at the upcoming UCI World Championships. Chris McGlinchey has had a fantastic season as ever racing on Zwift, and Tyler Williams, one to watch for the Legion of Los Angeles, had a great result a couple of weeks ago. As look out for Mike Cumming of Saris and the Pros Closet as well.
Yep, 15 of the riders amongst those teams will be riding in the first ever Esports World Championships, UCI Esports World Championships, and we'll go through those riders a little bit later on. Watch out for the Dutch racing team as well. They always manage to get riders up there, but to really, really finely balanced, difficult to pick a winner, especially on a course like this. So they are the teams, 19 teams in total, who are going to be battling out to try and see if they can take the day and try and change things at the top. The team with it all to lose, of course, Canyon Esports. They've been so consistent. They sit atop the rankings. Their lineup today: Gary Muller, Philip Dydner, Alex West, Ollie Jones, and the aforementioned Lionel Vuursan. And there they are, right on cue. Many countries represented: Belgium, Germany, South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. Ollie Jones will be representing New Zealand in the World Championships, as will Vuursan, as Hannah just said. They're the team to beat. They're the team that have really, really set the bench really high. Just like Heino in the women's racing in terms of the team time trial, Canyon Esports are one of the best drilled teams out there, aren't they? As we look at Team Saris and the Pros Closet, a team that have got some real punches in the mix.
They have, and they really, take time thinking about all the details, the tactics, how are they able to communicate together within Zwift and during the race. So I think a team who leave no stone unturned of how to perform.
Definitely. You wouldn't want to mess with Chris Bett. Look at that face. Bandana on. That is a race face if ever I've seen one on one of those stills. Absolutely terrifying stuff. Let's hope they're terrifying out on the road. Let's join the action. We're coming up very, very shortly to the first intermediate sprint of the day. And there we have the big bunch rolling through this beautiful French countryside. Remember, 47.039 is the distance of the race today, the longest of all of the Zwift Racing League races, and very similar in distance as well to the forthcoming World Championships as well. I think that's one of the reasons we've got this added little bit of distance to prepare these riders. So we're going to see a little bit of a different sort of race, but all together here. And a far more tactical affair here, I think we're seeing, Hannah, in these early stages. McGlinchey, again, one of the main protagonists. McGlinchey, out of all the riders out there, loves getting out in front, but we're seeing Cedar now dropping things. This is the first sprint of the day, the pavé sprint. You'll feel that little bit of extra resistance on Zwift as well riding through here. But Cedar looking like he's going to take maximum points here. The Canadian Thrall just riding through as well. Looks like Thrall might have timed this just a little bit better. Or is it going to be Davies who comes straight over the top there? Cedar still holding on, but no, he's been overtaken by Thrall. It looks like Thrall will have taken that one from Tadej Sidjar of the KISS Racing team. And Mako Voets, it looked like might have been in third place. We'll get confirmation of that. That's pretty much a blanket finish there. And unsurprisingly, that splits the group. And will somebody try and go over the top? So an explosive start there, Hannah. But, it's Voets who did take the win there for the Dutch rider, for the Dutch racing team. Vujasan in second place for Canyon, and then Thrall there in third place. So a good start.
Yeah, a very good start, but it just shows how it can affect your positioning, your points, which you can score out on the road if you open up too early. One of those riders, Hewell Davis, looked like he was going to be able to take the points, and in the end, came away with fourth and no points on the board for his team. So Dutch racing team timing that to perfection, but still a much bigger bunch here than we saw in the women's race at the same point on the course.
Indeed. It's again, we have seen different sorts of racing. I mean, all the racing has been very, very exciting indeed, but I think we've seen a little bit more aggressive racing on the women's side and slightly more tactical on the men's side, which is fascinating. I'm just wondering if we'll see that sort of racing here tonight. But saying that, Ottoma has now gone on off the front. So the Dutch really liking this course so far, taking the first intermediate sprint with Mako Voets. And now Rick Ottoma going solo. It's a long, long way to go. Still 34 kilometres, but putting out 7.5 watts a kilo. I don't know how long he can sustain this sort of effort for, Hannah, but fair play, maybe trying to start off maybe a little breakaway, because sometimes if you don't have a go, nothing ever happens. But we are moving towards, well, the first King of the Mountains of the day.
Yeah, Ottoma wanting to try and gain more points on the board for the Dutch racing team. And Ottoma is going to be joined here by Ollie Jones. He's going to overtake him just in the latter parts of this King of the Mountain. Ollie Jones opened up an exceptional gap, 12 watts per kilo, as he turns right into the final straights of this King of the Mountain.
A good riding here by Ollie Jones. Such a strong rider. Look at that. He can almost has got that at a canter, sticking out 11 or 12 watts. Actually eased off across the line there. Looks like Vujasan might just have taken second place across the line though. We'll get confirmation of that in a moment. I think it was actually Chris Smart from No Pins who took second. Vujasan in third place. But you can tell that that clearly some of pretty much all of these teams will have a tactical game to play, won't they? So good riding there. Let's just get confirmation. Yeah, Ollie Jones ahead of his team at Vujasan, so a really good bit of point scoring earlier on in round 7 here. Smart it was in third place from No Pins, but clearly they've come here with a plan, and that's unsurprising, isn't it, from Canyon. They're one of the best drilled team, but they're a team, they're a unique squad. They're one of the first teams to actually have an esports racing only team, which has been a lot of teams, of course, started off in the community, teams coming across on the road, but they were the first fully branded esports team, and they treat this very, very seriously indeed. So they'll have a proper team meeting, and clearly the race has been kind of looked at, and there'll be certain strategic points that certain riders will go for.
There will, and also the communication aspect between their manager, who will be giving them all the information they need, which riders they want to try and go for these intermediate sprints or the King of the Mountains, to try and save a couple of the other riders within the team, the likes of Phil Dagner, Gary Muller and Alex West for the back end of the race. So I think it's all about getting those points on the board early on, try and get that gap over Cyrus and the Pros Closet, who are their nearest team, the nearest rival in the overall team competition, only 5 points behind. So all it takes for Canyon Esports is to have a bad night tonight and maybe next week, and they could see, you know, they're knocked off the top spot in this Premier Division. So I think get the points on the board early, like we saw in the women's race.
Oh, definitely. Muscolari, that short tenure off the front, has been brought back to heel. But to Squinari there, again, is maybe trying something just to try and see if that would tempt anybody else. Quite often, as we just said before, if you do attack off the front, you get a lot of riders kind of resting up, being a little bit cautious. And I think given the distance that we've got today, there will be a little bit of caution kind of applied to the style of racing here. But the pace is definitely kind of steady-ish. If you look at the kind of watts per kilo that these riders are putting out at the moment, around kind of 2-3 watts per kilo for the riders of this sort of caliber, that's a kind of relatively, it's a tempo that they can deal with, isn't it? And they'll be pretty happy with this kind of situation. But when they're riding at these sorts of speeds, what it does, it opens the door for other riders to try and take a chance and maybe try and start the early formings of a breakaway.
Yeah, it might. If you look at the speeds of the riders who are just getting back into this bunch, they're in excess of 50 kilometers per hour right now, whereas the riders up towards the front who are sitting comfortably, only 46 kilometers per hour. So they're saving so much more energy, not having to go and dig so deep in and go into that red zone, meaning that they can recover quicker from the efforts that they've been making. So it also, you know, it's all about when's that elastic going to snap for those riders who are under pressure. Their intensity is high at the moment. Around 68 riders in this group. A couple of riders just got back into the group. Likes of Holden Comu.
Yeah, Van den Bosch now. We're focusing on a couple of these Dutch riders. The Dutch very well represented here. As you can just see the lovely rendering of this part of France. If you ever get a chance, if none of you have actually ridden on Zwift in this world, you should do, because it's lovely. It has its own real unique identity, and of course was first showcased in the virtual Tour de France. I remember there was a real sense of anticipation, wasn't there, Hannah, back in the summer when we had the virtual Tour de France, and you and myself amongst other riders were the first to be able to ride it, and it was so cool, wasn't it, to see. We saw the maps first. You know, what we heard kind of rumours about what it would be like, but to actually ride on it and to see the kind of attention to detail as we just see the bunch just rolling through these lovely sunflower fields here, it really is a cool world to ride in.
It's very, very cool, and you know, it was very special to be able to ride as one of the first few riders to see the course, to see the route, and to also then pick out some of the main, you know, icons and points within France. You see Mont Saint-Michel and the aqueduct, and it's incredibly special. Go past the fields, the sunflower fields as well, and the people at the side of the road in their King of the Mountains jerseys, all cheering on the riders, of course, all socially distanced within their own families. But yeah, it's incredibly special to be able to race on roads and pick out a few points that are famous in France too.
Indeed. I can just see a bit of an invisibility power-up just being used here. That's a cheeky one, and we can't actually think it's Deigner. I said I couldn't see who it was, of course, because he's invisible, but Deigner's gone off the front, or had done. He's actually been caught again now, but it's Berg and Sidar. Mel is up there as well. It's Odd Erland Hansen who's now gone to the front. Very, very tight here to see who's going to get these points across this next intermediate sprint. It looked like it was Vidar Mel who took that. We'll get confirmation. Or was it Van Denen? I think it was actually Klaas Van Denen of No Pins who got the sprint. Mel was in second, and then Alex West in third position there for Canyon Esports. So good riding there from the rider from No Pins. And this has formed a little bit of a breakaway as well. I'm wondering if these riders are going to continue with that effort. Very, very difficult with such a long way to go. But that sprint, the third sprint of the day, gives us that situation. That is the net result. Canyon Esports have 8 points on the night so far. No Pins with 4. Dutch Racing solid with 3 points. Callis with 2. And then Evok Bike with 1 solitary point. So good racing so far. I'd imagine that Canyon were pretty happy with the situation on the road. Still a big group out in front, but a good sprint there.
Yeah, and I think for those riders, you know, I don't think they would have wanted to have formed a breakaway or just to keep the pace going, to open up that gap, force the other teams to try and have to use their energy, close the gap, put them under a little bit of pressure as well. But for Alex West, just picking up a solitary point in that intermediate sprint just adds another point to the lead of Canyon Esports with 8 points now on the leaderboard.
Indeed. Well, there is the figure of the Belgian. You can just see what that effort has taken out of him. Look at him gasking. He's only just riding it around just under 300 watts. But the reason it looks like he's suffering so much is because he's trying to recover. And that's, I mean, the true definition of fitness, isn't it? And it's a question we often get asked. The true definition of fitness is the ability to recover from repeated efforts or whatever kind of, or, you know, repeated physical kind of punishments. And that's what you have to be good at in Zwift and in racing out on the road, especially in a points race like this, when if you're going to go for it, you need to have the ability to try and win the points, but then crucially ride at or near threshold. Afterwards, no real proper opportunity to recover. So even riding at kind of a relatively lowish output of watts still is very, very hard as you try and catch up with your kind of respiratory system and your heart rate.
Yeah, and it's also how you incorporate this intensity and these repeated efforts into your training as well. So when you come to the racing, your body and your respiratory system and the heart is already used to making these efforts to recover with back-to-back intensities. As we saw, there's only around 3 kilometers between the pave sprint into the aqueduct king of the mountain. So how you're able to recover from that and from the explosive power to be able to then make that repetition in the ballon sprint, and then again for 2 more, and then have enough for the finish line and the crucial point where the most points are on offer.
Exactly. Well, as we said before, as we said on numerous occasions, this is a team effort, and that's where you need to use your teammates. So if you've got, it's not as if one rider has to repeated efforts. If you use your resources wisely, you communicate amongst the team. If one rider goes for one, they then have for one set of points. Then there's an opportunity for them to recover before another rider takes the next set. So it's all about kind of strategy. But again, you can strategize as much as you want, but the bottom line is, isn't it, that the bike racing hurts. Even riding at a kind of steady speed, I mean, it really does hurt. So you can apply all the strategy you want just to try and almost mitigate the kind of pain that you feel. As we see another rider just trying to go clear here. It is a Squileri of Aero. He's got a couple of seconds lead now. We're just around 2 seconds lead. Kershaw is the rider in second position now. No Pins also up in the mix there, and he's sticking out. Well, Squileri making just under 500 watts look very, very easy there, staying very, very steady, using an aero power up as well, just to try and enhance that lead. But a nice little attack here.
Yeah, very nice. 3.5 seconds over Mikey Mottram, but again, a rider who might have wanted to take a couple more riders with him to make this effort a little bit easier. Still 25.9 kilometers of racing to go. So it's a long way to go and maintain this effort on your own. Although, as we say that, he is increasing that gap, 4.6 seconds now, and looking comfortable. Although, if you look at his heart rate and the effort that he's putting out and the amount of power, exceptional. But how long can he maintain this effort for?
Yeah, I mean, riding at around 420 watts, 400 watts is exceptionally hard. But he's doing a good job at the moment. But nobody interested in kind of essentially taking the bait. Quite often, a rider will go clear as kind of an incentive for other riders to try and break away and join you. Then they can share that effort, sit in each other's wheels. Because much like in the real world, in Zwift, there is a benefit for sitting in the slipstream of another, but just like in the real world as well, when you're out in front on your own, there's no shelter at all. So it is very, very hard to stay away from the pack, and that applies from riding out the front. It applies for getting dropped as well. If you get dropped from a group in Zwift, it is very, very difficult to get back in contact. But it looks like his lead is kind of holding steady now, but just look at the difference. He's having to hold around 5 watts a kilo, whereas the riders rotating on the front behind are only putting out like 3.5, 4 watts a kilo, but doing short efforts on the front. It just shows how much easier it is to ride behind in the slipstream, doing small turns on the front, and how hard it is to maintain that kind of gap out in front on your own.
Yeah, huge disparity between the numbers you have to put out at the front and if you're just sitting nice and comfortably within the bunch. And that being said, and something we were touching on just earlier about the intensity and the repeated efforts, it's also incredibly hard and difficult just to stay in the bunch and maintain that effort with such speeds. If we look at how fast the peloton is going right now, 56 kilometers per hour some of those riders are going as they're trying to move up in the peloton. So just to stay there, never mind also scoring the points in the intermediates.
Indeed. Well, this bunch is still very, very big indeed. And you can see it's a real proper, what we call in Zwift, a big blob of riders. There's so much benefit to sit in the wheels. Right in the middle of that pack is going to be the optimum place. Not necessarily the optimum place in terms of position, ahead of an obstacle, a climb, for example, but in terms of aerodynamic benefit, the place to be is kind of in the kind of top 20, sat in the middle of the wheels, and riders will learn how to maneuver their way through the bunch. Quite often it's worth a little bit of investment in effort just to try and move up, especially on a section like this, because this is a really, really unusual, quite disconcerting section. It's up and down ever so slightly, so the gradient kind of variance is only like 1 degree or 2, or just 1% or 2, but it's this twisting, turning nature that actually almost makes you dizzy in game, doesn't it? So as we saw in the women's race, we saw a couple of teams get to the front to try and string it out on this section, but Nikki Huggitt who's just moved to the front there. Dan Fleeman again, a man who's of course one of our key lead coaches for the Zwift Academy. He's in the mix here, racing for real, and he could be a tip for today, because we know how well that Dan Fleeman has adapted from racing on the road to racing on Zwift. He's had some good wins.
He has, a former World Tour professional rider, former National Hill Climb champion. So for Dan Fleeman, and now exceptional rider and racer on Zwift as well, with a strong team around him with Desaris in the pros closet, the likes of Holden Comu, the likes of Mike Cumming. So for Dan Fleeman, could we see him try and break things up on the climb, which isn't classified, remember, there's no points available, but we saw that be a crucial point in the women's race where a lot of riders started to get distanced. If Dan Fleeman can put the hammer down there, we could see this group of around 60 riders be whittled down there dramatically.
I think so, and looking at the composition of some of these teams here and some of the faster finishes, I think there'll be 1 or 2 teams. I do think Canyon perhaps, I certainly do think Saris and the pros closet will maybe try and do something on this climb. It's not for sure, of course, I don't know, I've not been into any of their team meetings, we don't know exactly what the tactics are, but there'll be some teams for sure as they swing left now onto this long straight road heading into the town. And then now swung left, heading back out on the course again. They're basically just heading back in towards town where they started. Now they're heading back out for another loop in a different direction. And very, very shortly we'll head onto the lower slopes of this uncategorized climb, which kind of maxes out at around 8 or 9%, with long pitches of 7 and 6, with a bit of a plateau midway through. But as you said, Hannah, in the women's race, we really did see the pace get forced and the bunch whittled down. Essentially, we had 12 riders left at the top. Be interesting to see how the men take on this race.
It will, and it'll be interesting to see which team wants to take it up as well. Do you want to sacrifice one of your riders to make the pace hard and consequently potentially lose a couple of your riders? So you've got to communicate with each other. How are you feeling? Are you feeling good tonight? Are the legs not feeling so great? Would we rather keep the pace as it is and we're more confident to score points in the next intermediates, the sprints, let's say, and then a sprint for the finish, as opposed to breaking things up on the climb? So I think it all comes down again to the communication method with the team directors, the sports directors, who will be in the ears of the riders and the teams, and riders being honest with each other and trusting each other as well. Indeed,
we'll be seeing Vitus Pro Cycling get into the mix as well. Again, a team who had a little bit of a nightmare last week in the team time trial, but trying to make amends today. They've always been one of the most aggressive teams racing on Zwift. Of course, they race in real life as well out on the road. They're a real versatile team with real strength in depth, and one of their number, Mikey Mottram, he has moved to the front now. Chris McGlinchey isn't too far away. He'll be representing Ireland in the forthcoming the UCI Esports World Championships. One of 15 riders, in fact, in this field. But look at this. It looks like Mottram and McGlinchey have just managed to move clear. It's Lionel Vuillassin from Canyon Esports just moving up to try and shut the gap here, but this is stretching out this group quite a lot now. This is what I expected. I didn't think that it would be Vitus that were going to put everybody else under pressure, but that certainly seems to be the plan so far on this climb, Hannah.
It does. Only 11 riders at the moment within a second of this group. So 11 riders in the group, then a 1 second gap to a further amount of riders. But if you look down, we had 67 riders in the group. Some of those riders now 4 or 5 seconds behind. If they want to try and get back into this leading group after the pace set by Vitus of Mikey Mottram and Chris McGlinchey, it's now or never if they want to be there for the finale or for the rest of the race.
As you said, yeah, about 66, 65 riders hit the bottom of the climb, and it's starting to thin out a little bit. Jamie Morris and a Rob Britt of Evoc and Kiss Racing, they are the riders that have been detached. There's a couple of other riders really starting to what we call swing at the back. And by that, I mean literally kind of fighting for dear life to stay onto the coattails of this group as Chris McGlinchey continues to force the pace here. He really is a force of nature. He has taken to racing on Zwift like a duck to water over the last couple of seasons. He really, really has. One of those riders that's happy to kind of mix it at the finish, but also more than happy to race aggressively, put his nose in the wind and make it difficult for everybody else. As Canyon Esports now in the form of the Belgian Zwift champion, Lionel Vujasan, he now takes to the front and opens up a little bit of a gap.
Yeah, well, I think the tactic there from Chris McGlinchey would have been that he knew that, and from his team manager, the sports director in his ear, he knew that the damage that they did to the bunch was putting the riders under pressure. They were splitting that group. Let's go again. Let's try and drop more riders from this group. Let's whittle it down. And Vujasin setting a nice pace at the front, opening up that gap. Mikey Mottram again closing it down for Vitus Pro Cycling, a rider there from the Dutch racing team. You can just see in your screen there, 4 riders from the Canyon Esports team, so well represented once again in this front group.
They certainly are. Mike Cumming is up there as well. A couple of riders. Tyler Williams is there from the Legion of Los Angeles. Again, he's already had a couple of top 10s in rounds so far, but it's kind of bunched up a little bit. A few riders here using their featherweight power-ups that makes them 9.5 kilograms lighter, and that is for 15 seconds. And on this steeper section is when you want to use it, and that's what they're doing, because this is where the road pitches up to about 8%. It's not the steepest of climbs, but it's actually quite a long effort. It's 4 or 5 minutes of effort, so any opportunity to save a little bit of energy, not necessarily to go on the attack, is a good idea. And in the next kind of 300 or 400 meters, they'll be reaching the top of this climb, as it's Deigner now who goes clear, just edges himself off the front for Canyon Esports. And Canyon alongside Vitus Hanna are the two teams on this climb that really want to try and make this race far more attritional. They're not happy with that kind of steady tactical sort of racing that we've seen earlier on. They really want to make this difficult, don't they?
They do. They want to make it difficult. They want to rip it up. They don't want to see a big group going to the finish today. They know that they'd be better off and in a stronger position with the group, more whittled down. And I think if you've got the numbers, you've got the strength, you've got the capability to really, do the damage on the climb, do it. Why give someone a free ride within the peloton, within the bunch to the finish?
Indeed. It's best to make it, especially over this sort of distance as well. As we said, this is the longest race, just over 47 kilometres of all of the races in the Zwift Racing League. Around about an hour, well, just over an hour of racing, we're roughly estimating, as we see the image there of Joost van der Bosch of the Netherlands. Again, his power has just dropped a little bit on this descent. Many of the riders, well, look at that, the first proper sight there of Lionel Vujasan dropping a anvil power-up. Yahoo! It's the first one we've seen. Great stuff there. So that actually makes you heavier for 30 seconds. And again, it's a power-up that you need to make sure you use it exactly at the right time, because like any other power-up, there's not so much of a big consequence if you use it at the wrong time. You're going to get some sort of micro benefit. But if you use the anvil at the wrong time, well, that could see you game over.
It could be exceptionally damaging. So for Lionel Vujasin, keeping that one for the descent, making his life easier, more simpler on the descent, gives himself a little bit of recovery time as well, and to make yourself heavier on the descent as well. Like you say, you won't want to be saving that for any other part of the course. Get rid of it as soon as the road goes downhill.
Definitely. It's a good way. There's actually 5 points on today's course across every King of the Mountains and every intermediate sprint. There's the opportunity to pick up another power up. They are, of course, completely random, and the riders keeping their fingers crossed, should this come to a big bunch sprint, that they get the aero power up. That's the one that you really want. Kind of second best in a bunch sprint, of course, would be the draft power up, which is the icon of a van, and then maybe even the featherweight power up. That can give you a little bit of a help when you initially accelerate, but it's the aero one that everybody wants when it comes to a sprint. But that was a really nice illustration of when to use the anvil. So thank you very much, Mr. Lionel Vujasan, one of the big characters here in Zwift Racing. Been a big character over the last couple of years and has really come to the fore, and will be one, as we said before, will be representing his country, Belgium, alongside the likes of Victor Campenaerts. I mean, that's going to be amazing for him to be riding alongside his compatriots who ride on the road as well. I'm so excited for the first ever UCI Esports World Championships. That's going to be held on the 9th. You can see it here on Zwift. Equal prize money, equal everything, equal race distance. It's going to be the figure 8 course in Watopia of around 50 kilometres, and we'll see the first ever Esports World Champion crowned. And I believe, I've not seen it just yet, Hannah, I haven't got sight to it, there's a rainbow jersey, but the bands are slightly pixelated to kind of as a nod towards the esports.
I love it. I love the attention to detail throughout, within the courses, the jerseys, how it's all run, and I think, as you just alluded to, the equality, the same distance for the men's and women's race. It's going to be very, very exciting, and both the men's and women's race stacked with talent.
Yeah, you check online if you head to the Zwift website, zwift.com, or head over to their Instagram page as well. There'll be more details, and if you hang on post-show, post-race, we'll have a little bit of a teaser for you as well, just to give you a flavour of what's to come in just a couple of weeks' time. But meanwhile, back on course here on the Petite Boucle. Of course, they've called it the Petite Boucle because the Grand Boucle, of course, is the nickname for the Tour de France. And as we raced here back in the summer in the first ever virtual Tour de France, it's a nice little nickname to use. But 15 and a bit kilometres to go now. And again, looking at the power that's being kicked out at the moment. There's riders, I think, here, Hannah, just using this opportunity to recover a little bit. And I think there's going to be a lot of comms going on now, isn't there? We've still got 2 intermediate sprints to come. We've still got the Aqueduct KOM in the reverse direction and the Pavé sprint. And then they will all be coming in the next kind of 3 or 4 kilometres. In fact, they're relatively tightly packed. But I think a lot of communication now about, okay, how are we going to run this one? Given different kind of permutations, because it hasn't quite thinned out like I thought it would on that climb.
No, it hasn't. 42 riders within this front group, so we have lost just over 20 riders from this front group, but still very large group with lots of representatives from different teams. So how are these riders going to do this one for the next 2 intermediate sprints? Are they going to just think, let's just focus on the finish line? They'll have had to have done their homework, as we saw in the women's race. The finish line comes 75 metres after the final right-hand turn. So precision, timing is going to be everything. What power-up have the riders got? What power-up are the riders going to randomly get at the next 2 intermediate arches? Yeah, definitely. It is going to be absolutely crucial to get... well, luck obviously plays its part. If you get the right sort of power-up, that is what you need. But as you said, just over 40 riders in this front group. We're looking at Conor McGoldrick here, rides for the Evoque bike team. Again, a very, very good rider indeed. But again, looking at the power here, 290 watts, that's moved up to 340. It's the kind of power that these riders should be able to sustain relatively easy. I say relatively easy. Everything, of course, is relative. This sort of pace would put most riders straight out the back. Again, they're going to do this course in around an hour and 5 minutes, give or take. It took me an hour and a half this morning on my little recon ride, which I'm still recovering from. But we've just seen an attack now from Rick Ottomer. Ottomer now goes clear now, kicking out just under 8 watts a kilo. The Dutch have really been keen to go on the offensive here today. They have, and just at that moment he dropped one of the invisibility power-ups as well, so no other riders within that peloton could see him making that attack. He's gained just less than 3 seconds so far over Astrom and Voyasin, but he's been very, very active, the rider from the Netherlands. We saw him attack into the Aqueduct King of the Mountain earlier. He's wanting to do the same again for this King of the Mountain in reverse this time. But still increasing that gap, 4.3 seconds, and just look at the disparity and the difference between the power, 7.3 watts per kilogram over 5.4 from Voyasin. Yeah, he's moving very, very quickly indeed. He's got enough of a gap here, just under 5 seconds. A couple of riders now trying to close the gap as we head towards this intermediate point. This, of course, is the Aqueduct KOM. 3, 2 and 1 points, should I say, on offer across the line here. And remember, it's the team on the night that accumulates the most points. The first 30 riders across the finish line at the end will score points towards their team. And there's further opportunities out on the road to gather points as well.
And the team at the end of the night with the most points is the winning team. So good ride there by the rider from the Netherlands. Rick Ottomer takes the win there. Looks like it's just ahead of the Ollie Jones-Alex West duo, throwing down some big watts there. West and Jones so reliable. Canyon Esports have ridden so well consistently. Good ride by Ottomer there, but again bunching their riders at the top. They're not kind of taking anything for granted at all, just in case something happens near the end. So great tactics there to score some more points, and that's the situation on the night so far. So Canyon Esports with 11, Dutch Racing with 6, No Pins with 4, Callas Esports Racing with 2, and then Evoc with 1 point there. So great performance there from Canyon Esports, and surprisingly for me, no showing at all from Saris and the pros closet. I wonder what that means for the finish. Are they planning something else? Because they've been very quiet, and sort of like conspicuous by their absence almost.
Yeah, very strange for us not to see them score anything so far. But as you say, perhaps actually wanting to try and flood the finish and then pick up points where the most points are available. 40 for the win, 35 for second, 30 for third, and from fourth down to 30th, it's 27 all the way down to 1. So could be saving it all for that. We've got Dan Fleeman in this front group, as is Mike Cumming, Ryan Larson, and Holden Komu as well. So 4 riders in the front group for Saris, plus the pros closet, if I can get the name out.
There's some very long team names. I do forgive you. It's been a long night so far, but no, just a reminder of what's at stake tonight. Of course, Canyon Esports lead, Saris and the pros closet in second. We're just coming up to the final intermediate sprint of the day. Just over 11 kilometers remain, and it's Vujasan who's going again. McGoldrick goes over the top though. Looks like McGoldrick is going to get this one. Muller comes through into second position there. Muller, of course, another one of the Canyon Esports riders. It's a solid riding here, but Collard it is that looks like he's going to take the win. Oh, Muller just goes over the top. Perfect timing there by Muller. So perfect ride there from Muller from South Africa to take more points for Canyon Esports there. Collard in second, Mikri Mottram from Vitus there in third place. Again, wonderful use. I mean, just like Heino in the women's, Canyon Esports in the men's are just, they put it up there in terms of the way they're riding as a team. Such a closely knit unit.
They are, and I can't help but think, did Collard think he was past the finish line, or he was already, well ahead of Muller there? Because it seemed to me that he just eased off the gas ever so slightly, and that allowed Muller just to pip round him and take the maximum points. So 3 to Muller and Canyon Esports, only 2 to the team of Evoc.
Well, that is very interesting indeed. Canyon Esports now 14 points, and the team in second position overall haven't scored any at all. That really does give them a nice buffer heading in towards the finish here. Still lots of points on offer, and as Hannah alluded to or suggested earlier on, lots more points on offer across the line. But as it's very tight at the top, scoring those points earlier on in the race, very important. As we see Elliot Holton now, who's gone clear, open up a nice little lead. Elliot Holton riding for the KISS Racing team, using that little featherweight power up on this little gentle rise here. The rider from Canada, he's opened up a 4-second gap. That's a good little move.
Very good move, and off the back of the effort in that intermediate sprint, where all the other riders who have gone for that intermediate sprint are at such a high intensity, they're trying to recover from the effort and regroup. He's counterattacked and used that opportunity to get ahead of the riders. He's just over 5 seconds ahead of the group led by Muller of Canyon Esports. But you can just see Elliot Holton there of Canada in his pain cave, out the saddle, pushing a lot of watts, but just keeping the consistency, keeping the power down on the pedals. And no rider and no team really wanting to try and actually close this gap. They're quite happy to let the rider from KISS Racing team get off the front.
They are, and he's having to hold just under 6 watts a kilo, which is for anybody's standard that's hard. That is very the big question is how long can he maintain that sort of power? Because looking at his stats on my screen here, he's running at around 181 beats a minute at the moment. So his heart rate is very elevated, as you would expect, putting out this sort of power. This is kind of just on the cusp of kind of anaerobic. He's riding very hard here. but has eked out a nice little lead, 6.7 seconds. This is a nice little gap here for the Canadian, a rider we haven't seen too much of, but use that opportunity. It's classic textbook stuff, isn't it? Just after a sprint or after a breakaway gets caught, quite often it is the ideal opportunity, provides fertile ground to go on the offensive yourself. So a good move here from the rider from KISS.
And also a team who isn't going to challenge Canyon Esports for the overall title within this Premier Division. So for them, this is a nice moment for them to recuperate, regroup, now start to think about the finish and how they're going to be able to swamp and take as many points there, and have the maximum points taken away by Holtum of KISS Racing Team, because they're not going to gain any points back for the overall team classification of the Premier League. So actually quite happy for Elliot Holtum to keep gaining that gap. He's maintaining his time, 7.4 seconds at the moment. But you just see the effort, how much more power and effort you have to do if you're out in the wind on your own.
And he's a lighter rider as well. He kind of weighs in at around 59 kilograms. So on this flatter, so he's actually more of a climber. So to kind of maintain this sort of pace for a lighter rider on the flat, where kind of power is absolute, he's not going to be able to generate the kind of same big power numbers as some of the heftier riders behind, or some of the riders that are around 68, kind of 72 kilograms. So this is really, really going to be very, very hard. He's going to be struggling here, but I tell you what, he's still holding steady at 8 seconds. Still a long way to go though, 7.7 kilometers. But in terms of the terrain that Holtum and the remaining riders in the field have got to face, it's just ever so gently undulating, no real climbs at all, a couple of just gentle rises and falls before that finish. And it is a very, very fast finish indeed. And crucially, as you mentioned, Hannah, that finish, you need to have done your homework, haven't you? Because you talked about that finish, the finishing line actually only coming into sight for the riders with 75 metres to go. And we did see in the women's race, the sprint open up quite late with only about 350, 400 metres to go. It was quite interesting the way they opened things up in the women's race.
It was. No rider or team wanted to take it up too early. But it was the rider of Lou Bates, who was the solo representative from her No Pins R3R team, who closed the gap back to one of the riders at Belforth, who'd gained a gap. But for the riders and maybe for these men's teams, if any of their team managers saw the way the women's race planned out, they could feed back and relay that information of when you need to start to open up that sprint, give them that information, just refresh the memory, refresh the brain of, don't leave it too late, make sure you get that jump, make sure you open up the sprint early enough, but also don't drop your power up too early, because you saw Belforth have the all important aero power up, used it very, very early, but it ran out before she got to the line, and consequently Bates was able to get around her with the draft power up. So if any of the managers have seen how the women's race got on, it could be interesting to see how the information's fed back.
Well, generally speaking, with teams that have both men's and women's teams racing, it'll be the same direct sportif that's across. So they'll look at the women's race, take information and feedback from the riders themselves, the way the race actually panned out. But looking at Holtum at the moment, he's got 11 seconds, so double digits in Zwift Racing for an individual rider against the rest of the field is impressive. This is a good ride, but still with 6.2 Ks to go. You've got a feeling that there's a lot of might behind, but I'd imagine soon there needs to be a little bit of coordination, because just looking at the stats of this rider from Canada here, it was kind of a relatively modest 57th in the last Premier Division race, but prior to that he won every single one of his Zwift races, so 5 back-to-back wins on Zwift. So he's clearly a rider that is very, very capable indeed, and he steals another second here. 12 seconds is his lead, still holding 5 watts a kilo, but he is going to be going through his own personal hell here as we look at Matt Brook looking very, very calm and collected in comparison.
Yeah, he certainly will, and these last 5.7 kilometres will be absolute torture for Holtum, as he already been away for several kilometres now, but what has he got left? How can he hold on? He's taken another second here, 13 seconds now, and if you look at the power that he's putting out, again, in comparison to the riders in the bunch, his is much higher, only 2.7 watts per kilogram. But I think once this peloton starts to up its game, we near the finish and the tactical game starts to play out, the time will be cut immensely when the teams start to get themselves organised.
Yeah, we've seen riders lose in massive amounts of time in a relatively short kind of period, but he's still holding just over 5 watts a kilo here. 5.2 kilometers to go for the Canadian, riding for the KISS Racing team, and there is his stats at the moment, holding steady around 300 watts. Again, a relatively low RPM here, but a very, very high heart rate, as you would expect, riding at around over 43 k's an hour. And again, out of the saddle a lot. We see riders, don't we, Hannah, using different kind of techniques. But it looks like he's a rider that's using kind of a lot of torque, so low cadenced, but kind of high torque, which a lot of riders kind of favour on Zwift, don't they?
Especially, and I think riders need to find what works for them as well. Trial and tested within training, within different races, and if they find that this is the way that they're able to maintain that high power, keeping that low cadence, and really put all the power through the legs, and which goes into the pedals and translate to the speed and the power within the game. As we see, he sits down now, really churning that gear over.
Well, yes, he's I think we got a bit slightly speeded up camera footage there. It suddenly looks like he was in a bit of a sprint, but he's back into his rhythm again. Rolling, still holding around 313 watts, still a gap of 13 seconds. He's got 24 ride-ons here. You can just see at the bottom right of his little set of metrics there, that little thumb sign, that's basically the ride-ons that he's getting. So anybody out there with their Zwift Companion app fired up, please give this rider a few ride-ons. Hopefully we'll see that number, and just seeing that can really help him, can't it? It's got a pocket full of ride-ons there as well. Anybody who gets a ride-on, they kind of mass in your pockets. So please encourage this rider, get behind him, because this is, we haven't seen a performance like this in any of this races. A solo rider really put the bit between his or her teeth and go solo. 10 seconds now. Motram's trying to come across the gap here. Motram from Vitus Pro Cycling, kicking out 7.6 watts a kilo, has sensed potentially Hannah here that there's a danger. Under 4Ks to go. This could be quite an incredible coup from the rider from Canada.
It could, and still no real chase from the main pack, the main peloton behind. It is Ward who is starting to close that gap with 9 seconds now, but Mottram coming to the back wheel of Holtam very, very quickly, down to 5 seconds now. So Mikey Mottram of Great Britain, racing for the Vitus Pro Cycling team, wanting to, a senses that he could try and take the individual victory tonight, and also take maximum points for the team of Vitus.
Well, Holtam still holding on, but he's going to be caught very, very shortly by Mottram. There is the bunch, really bearing down at speed, and the gap has been slashed. Look at that, in just 500 metres, 10 seconds have been taken. Mottram isn't going to take any prisoners at all. He's certainly not going to drop into the wheel of Holtam. Straight out in front. Let's have a look at the stats of Mottram. Look at that. Great bit of lighting there as well, adding a sense of drama to the proceedings there. But Guy just goes straight over the top as well there. So we've got a couple of riders in the lead, but it does look like it's all going to come back together there. But a good bit of a good bit of riding there by the rider from Vitus. Clearly, Hannah sensed an opportunity to go clear, but the bunch were kind of equal to that one.
Yeah, they were. Sense the danger of Mottram. They know he's a huge threat to the riders. I mean, it's a name that is always popping up within the races within Zwift. But interesting to me, it looks like Saris and the pros closet are starting to get themselves together within the bunch. Dan Fleeman, Ryan Larson and Holden Comu. But where is the team of Canyon Esports? They aren't, they weren't the team that were closing this gap. They're sitting nice and comfortably within the bunch, saving as much energy for the final.
They certainly are. Well, they've got a couple of riders up there. We know they've got pretty much their whole team in there. They've scored a lot of points tonight out on the road, so very aggressive in the intermediate sprints. Who's this just going over the top? Looks like that's one of the riders from Team Turbo going clear now. It's Tanner Ward from Team Turbo who goes clear. Dan Fleeman not too far away as well. Dropped back a little bit, but Ward now riding very, very well indeed. We haven't seen him all day. Another rider who'll be heading off to the Esports World Championships in a couple of weeks, representing the United States. And the Tanner Ward now goes clear. He's got around a second lead, 1,900 metres to go, and he uses a burrito power-up. Great stuff there. Means he's it's a featherweight power-up, should I say. That will help a little bit. It's not the ideal power-up for this situation, but Hannah, at this point, you'll just take what you can.
You will. It's whatever power up you've got. Use it to your advantage. Where whichever one you've got, it can all give you the micro advantages into this finale. And Ward still with that 1 second lead. Votes is leading the chase, as is with Voyasin. Mikey Mottram, despite that effort, still sitting in 4th place there for Vitus Pro Cycling.
Well, is it going to all come back together here? Because his lead is just under a second. I can sense it. It's now Dynia taking it up. We talked about where were Canyon Esports. Dynia now takes things up for Canyon Esports behind. It's also Callas, Vida Mel up there as well. Camper, we're going to be going under the Flamme Rouge. 1 kilometre to go very, very shortly. And it is all back together here for the Zwift Racing League Round 7, the longest race of the series. And it is all back together. It looks like we're going to have a big bunch sprint royale here on the Petite Boucle course, Hannah.
We are 43 riders going into this finish, so a mass bunch sprint here into this race, into this finale. But Fleeman opens up for Saris and the pros closet. Rick Ottimer, who was very aggressive in the earlier parts of the race for the Dutch racing team, going clear. So they've got just over a second's gap now, Matt.
They certainly have. Well, Fleeman is a rider that knows how to go long. He prefers that kind of longer effort, but going over the top is Ottimer here. The Dutchman goes straight over the top of the rider from the United Kingdom, but the bunch is bearing down. A raft of power-ups have been dropped with only 350 metres to go. Nicholas Hug goes now with Welling just behind him. Ollie Jones isn't too far away as well. Aero power-ups deployed left, right and centre. Still Nicky Hug in front, but look, 75 metres to go. Ollie Jones comes round the corner for Canyon. Hug still in the lead. Who crossed the line in first place? It looks like it was. We'll just get confirmation. Ollie Jones takes it on the line. Fantastic bit of timing there by the rider from Canyon Esports. An absolutely superb sprint there, Hannah. A breathless finale, but all about timing. But we need to get confirmation, but it did look like it was Ollie Jones who took the win there.
Yeah, very close.
Or it might have actually been Spencer Segbrook from Team Turbo who came by very, very late. We'll get confirmation in a few moments' time. A blanket finish there, but an absolute thriller.
And if you just see, Fleeman and Ottimer opening up that gap with 600 metres to go. And, just couldn't quite hold on to that lead. But the mass blanket finish, the mass sprint into the final. And it all comes down to that time, and as we said again, when do you drop your power up? As you get a replay, you can just see the gap that Fleeman and Ottimer had was Tyler Williams of the Legion of Los Angeles, who was closing down the gap to the duo out front. And, Williams had some great results 2 weeks ago, up there again in today's sprint. But the likes of Segbrook, Ollie Jones, just keeping the powder dry with that flurry of aero power-ups being dropped. And it did look like it was going to be head-to-head for Ollie Jones and the rider here, Welling.
Oh, this was at the final corner, wasn't it? Came into view very, very late indeed. Looked like the jolly Ollie Jones was going to get it, but it was Segbrook on the line from the United States of America. The American, oh, there we go. Look how close it was on the line there. A real blanket finish. Coy could hardly separate the two, but just on the right-hand side, it was the rider from Team Turbo, Spencer Segbrook, who takes the win. And there is confirmation. Apologies there for Ollie Jones for calling him across the line in first. That was a blanket finish there, but wonderful performance there by the American. Superb individual win by Team Turbo. Ben Hill was in second place for Team Aero. Holden Como, the 2019 American Zwift champion, in third place, the first rider home from Saris and at the pros closet. Then Ollie Jones, he took fourth place, a mere 2.223 seconds behind. Anders Frisk in fifth for the Swedish Zwifters. Then we have Thomas Thrall for Evoc, Gary Muller of Canyon, and then the first home for Vitus was Chris McGlinchey. Nicholas Pedersen was also there for PO Auto, and then rounding out the top 10 is Chris Smart from No Pins E Racing Team. Whew, what a finale. What a great couple of races we have. We'll have a look at, that's the finishing line points there. Unsurprisingly, that gives you, it's the same as the race result, but 40 points go to the rider from Team Turbo. Hill takes 35. 30 could be a very, very important 30 points there for the rider from Saris and the pros closet. And then two riders in the mix there, Ollie Jones and Gary Muller. The only team, interestingly, Hannah, there with 2 riders in the top 10. So the team's really evenly spread, which is going to make it very interesting on the countback in relation to the points. So the riders further down are going to be even more important here, aren't they?
It certainly will. With 43 riders finishing in that front group, all the points for the top 30 across the line will have been mopped up. So, as you say, even if you're not sprinting for the individual win, you have to sprint for every placing within the bunch, and it all comes down. Canyon Esports, though, 85 points. Saris in the pros closet, 67. Close with Bolt Racing Team with 61. PO Auto Ceramic Speed with 51. Evoc bike presented by Ensured 43. Turbo there in 6th. Aero in 7th. Team Swedish Swifters in 8th. No Pins R3RE Racing Team with 9. And Dutch Racing Team, despite their aggressive nature today, finishing 10th.
Indeed. Well, rounding out the 14 teams scoring points, Vitus there with 24, Callas, Legion of Los Angeles, and then the draft team in the red in 14th place with 3 points. So that is, well, that's the third win of a round by Canyon Esports. So they are on fire. Back-to-back wins, in fact, when you count the team time trial last week. That really was a fantastic race. Again, what an individual performance as well. I think it's worth picking out that the solo performance earlier on from the rider from Canada who went clear, but it wasn't to be, was it? You could just sense that the peloton were just holding something back. But it's so wonderful to see the different types of racing that we get here on Zwift, and that this Zwift Racing League has given us. We've got aggressive racing, riders going for individual wins, the tactics of teams further down the mix as well. There's so much to think about, and that's made that hour and 5 minutes go very, very quickly.
It certainly has, and I think, as you say, Elliot Holton, playing to his strengths, he knew that his option of taking the win today, taking out maximum points, was let's go on the offensive for KISS Racing Team. We know we're not a huge threat to the overall, and it was looking very likely that he was going to be able to hold on, but the desperation from Mikey Mottram from Vitus Pro Cycling wanting to try and get across then forced the teams behind, the likes of Canyon Esports. They couldn't let Mottram, get any space, get any time, and all consequently came back together. But into the finish, Fleeman for the Saris and the Pros closet, and then Rick Ottomer again for the Dutch Racing Team, trying their luck, trying to go early. They know they don't pack a huge punch. Fleeman more suited to those climbs, but in the end, a blanket finish.
It was a very, very exciting finale. It's been a great evening's racing. Let's have a little look at what that means at the top of the leaderboard. And there we go, Canyon Esports. As I said before, that is their third win out of the 7 rounds, and that gives them a total of 135 points. Saris and the Pros Closet still not too far behind at all with 129, only 6 points adrift. Then we have PO Auto Ceramic Speed in third with a 118. Then we have Bolt with 109. Evoc, a solitary point behind them with 108. And then we have in sixth, Team Swedish Zwifters, Callas Esports, Aero, Vitus Pro Cycling, and then rounding out the top 10 is Draft. And hopefully we can have a little look at a little bit further down the order to have a look at what teams are still in the drop zone. Well, not too much has changed. Team ADHR aren't looking, well, not a great place for them to be, but I'm sure they'll regroup next season. But Team Skyline in 18th and Trinity Road Racing. So it looks like it's now between those 3 teams. It looks as if the Legion of Los Angeles have done enough to save themselves from the drop zone there, Hannah.
It does, and picking up and finishing within the top 14 teams in the points today. It looks like they've solidified being able to stay within the Premier Division of this Zwift Racing League. So good job from them. It doesn't look like they'll be untouched into the team time trial next week. But unfortunately, I think it'll be we'll be saying bye to Trinity Road Racing, Team Skyline, and Team AHDR they'll be going into the Community League, and we'll see 3 more teams move up from the Community League into this Premier Division.
I know. I mean, we wait with bated breath. I mean, there's so that we've got one more race to go. Of course, that is next week, and that is the Watopia Waistband. It's an undulating course, and obviously our favourite commentary team, apart from us, of course, Nathan Guerra and Dave Tell will be taking us through that next week. So don't miss out, because in both of the leagues, it's pretty tight at the top in terms of the top 3. In the Women's League as well, there's still a lot of jeopardy in relation to who's going to go down. So lots to play for. I cannot see how the final round goes on. That's next week. Remember on Friday to tune into OJ Borg with the World of Zwift. And we gave you a little teaser earlier on, didn't we, Hannah? Because we've got the first ever UCI Esports World Championships to be held on Zwift on the 9th of December. And we had about 30 of the riders across the men's and women races riding in that championships in just a few weeks' time. So we're going to leave you, before we say goodbye, with a bit of a teaser. Well, we'll say goodbye now. So from me and Hannah in France, it's goodbye. But check this out ahead of the World Championships coming in just a few weeks.